Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is OctoMan, and today I'm going to go over with you over some simple game design you can actually do on your own, as well as how do you actually, whenever you're a starter in game creation, it's maybe the easiest way to get some simple ideas together, as well as trying to figure how things are working together. Like, how do we get Unity working, how do we get game design in general, and how we keep things easy. And that's the most issue I think people are struggling with, especially whenever they are going to start creating games on their own. And so in this part, or in this lesson or lecture, whatever you can call it, or this video stream, I'm gonna talk about some simple things. Hi Raman, thanks a lot for tuning in. Um, in which we're gonna go and just take a look at simple things. And how does it work actually is rather simple. First off, if you have no game idea at all, that's not a problem. Just go into the world, just go onto websites like a Congregate or whatever, and check out what kind of games are going to be played over there. Also, think about what is the game you want to go and create. Literally, that's the easiest and simple way. Just check out some other games, see what's going to work for them, what's going to take, what does it take you to actually perform whatever the game is going to or has to offer. So what we're gonna need to think about is how actually are we able to do this? Like, are we able to perform and create this game idea in general, and what does it really need? So we need to understand the problems we are going to go for, or whichever the problems are we are going to have to solve in the meantime. Like, meanwhile we are creating the game, of course we will stumble upon the one or the other stone, of course, whichever it is, and we need to solve it. As a programmer, you always have to solve problems. Don't think about like, I want to make this super huge game, whatever. We want to go and figure and check out what is going to be the actual problems we have to solve. Um, yeah, that is not Unity, of course. So we're gonna take a look into Unity after I explain what we are going to do today over here. This program is called Inkscape. In Inkscape, you can create your own vector graphics, in which we can later on export and bring them over to Unity. Of course, I have my Unity already loaded, so it took a while, and so on and so forth. So we're gonna need to first off have some thing to work with. We can literally go instant to the prototyping stage after we have actually created some, let's say, some user interface things, whatever we want to navigate through. We once again will go into Unity in just a second. I wanna just explain what I'm going to create over here and what we are going to do with all these things I just created beforehand. So if you are not a designer, like in case of how to create a button, or what is a button about, keep it simple and just use something like Inkscape, in which you can just simply create forms and shapes and all the other good stuff. If you want to learn more about Inkscape, I recommend my own course, of course, which you can find down below in the description. If not, then it will probably be later over there. Otherwise, just check out my channel and you're gonna find it. So we do not touch too much the design in general. We just want to make sure that we understand what the problems are we have to solve in the long run. Like, when we create games, we of course we don't need to literally see what we are going to create, like, but for explaining that for other people, it is easier for me to show you some simple graphics over here, and you instantly understand what these are going to be about, but, well, most of the time. So that's why I created just these simple circles, literally, with just some simple graphics inside, so we get an idea of what this game design in general is going to be about. And this is a super simple game, but it also has its own stones, like its own bottlenecks, I would say, which we need to, yeah, cover or discover meanwhile we create simple games. So simple, what is a simple game? Literally is something in which we have a button, and whenever we click on this button, there's some action going to happen. And in this game, I try to explain now what this game is going to be about. So we have like three main buttons. It's this fish symbol, it's this digging, or let's say shovel symbol, and this mining symbol. So what do we do is whenever we click on one of these ones, we want to get something in return, like we want to do some action. The action is going to be whenever we click on the fish, we get a fish in return. If we are digging, we're going to shovel away some sand in the center. And if we are like taking this pickaxe over here, then we break out some ore from a stone, or just a stone, or whatever it is. Then we also have like this main navigation over here, which is for upgrades, which is for being like a let's say inventory, which we can later on sell all the content, like we sell the stones and ore and gold, whatever we find. It doesn't matter at the very beginning, literally. We can sell these for different, let's say, values. Like a gold is more worth than a stone, and so on. The game idea behind this is we want to make sure that we shovel or we dig the hole, and we want to find something inside over here. Like we want to dig a hole a million times. As you can see over here, there is like a health bar on top of this. Health bar literally just represents how much sand or how often we need to dig away sand from this hole in the center. We can put like literally anything inside. We can put a chest over there. We can make a I think about making a dinosaur, like bones and something like that inside. So we're gonna dig free something like, something archaeological. So, for the other two buttons, we gonna think about, or we should think about whenever we plan ahead. First, we want to make maybe some achievements, so something we can go and achieve. Let's assume the player does click a button once, we're gonna get an achievement for clicking a button 10 times, as an example, or 100 times, 1,000 times, and then we can unlock things for them to make this even more enjoyable. And I'm not quite sure what we can make the shovel use of. Maybe some other upgrades for the shovel itself. Maybe I gonna change the symbol for let's say we can, as an example, get some guys to do the work for us. Like we can get some workers which are going to dig some ore for us, like in idle games in which we try to automate things to get faster or become faster. Same for the other ones. So we're gonna maybe later on find somebody who is going to create fish for us automatically. We're gonna have, and once again, this is something you're gonna, of course, need to think about in the first place, but also we can just simplify this by code. We don't need to see an actual character being there, but we can implement this so we have some visuals, or some nice visuals. So for the menus, or this is basically the game idea, we're gonna collect money, and whenever we have enough money, we can buy upgrades to dig deeper, dig faster, or we get more ore, better ore, whatever it is. We can think about all these possibilities for these upgrades, and then we just multiply whatever the digging amount is. Like when we shovel once with a shovel, we reduce the sand amount by 1, so we are going to be over here. Hi Erol, thanks a lot for tuning in. And also we're gonna have like a little upgrade screen or something, or like an inventory screen, which we just hover over or put over this particular one, so we can buy or use items. Like using, as an example, we're gonna use fish for eating, and which reminds me to something. It's going to be maybe over here as being some kind of a stamina bar. So whenever the stamina has, we maybe start at 50 by 50, it's how often we can do an action on our own. Like we can click a button 50 times, and then this stamina goes down meanwhile, like 50 from the 50 downwards until 0. And whenever we click on the digging box, or the digging button, or even the other buttons over there, or any other interaction, is going to cost stamina. So we reduce stamina bar until 0. We need to wait like 1 or 2 seconds until we get stamina literally back to this, until we are back to 50. So what you can see overall, this is a simple one-screen game. There's nothing else at the moment over here. We don't do fancy animations at the moment because we want to get the basics of the game literally up and running. Meaning we want to create the interactions first, for these main buttons, maybe also for these as well. We want to get a simple money design or money system running over there. We want to get this bar running, like how often we have to dig even more to reveal whatever is inside the hole. And later on, whenever we are like at the 0 over here, which this is basically the main goal of the game, just dig out whatever is inside. And then we maybe can think about, okay, what can we do afterwards? Do we reset the game? Is it like a re-rolling the game? Or is there going to be something different? And once again, so in case of design and in case of a game idea, once again, just go to the internet, find one whichever suits you and your knowledge, and then perform whatever we get over there, or whatever you find over there. So what we gonna, since or I already explained whatever we are going to create, we now go over to Unity and see how we can actually create all of the content we are going to see over here. So as you can see, I kept it black and white because for prototyping that is more than enough, as well as we're gonna get the icons and all the other good stuff literally away, and we just export now everything we need. So what do we actually need is we don't need any numbers. We probably need some borders over here, or bars, which we can later on tint, like squares. We can, if we want, to take the background over here, but at the moment the background has no effect. Same for the hole in the middle. Once again, it's just to explain things. We don't, at the moment, don't need it. So if we later on go into the real design, like a game design, it's not the same as graphic design. Then we're gonna go and take all of these. Adding monsters in the underground and make the player purchase upgrade suits to fight them. Well, as you can see, my super simple idea over here is you can adapt to it anytime. And, creating or adding monsters and all the other good stuff whenever we have digged the hole deep enough, like 1 million times. Of course, you can change the complete rules of the game and make like something working underground. As you can see, you can simply do this without any issues. You just need to understand how things are going to work and how do you later on interact with these monsters. But of course, over here, you need to design them. You need to understand how you go from a simple game design or from a simple idea literally to the next stage. But before you can do this, you need to understand once again, and you need to see if you are able to perform all of that. A lot of people do make the same mistakes. The mistakes literally are going to be, I want to make this super MMORPG, but I don't really get the idea behind it. What does it really take to make an MMORPG? How does a server work? How does like everything work? And so I get a lot of requests about, oh, could you do this? Could you do that? But in the end, you need to have enough knowledge about any topic you actually are requesting. What I do over here is I create now a simple texture atlas in which I have like all these buttons later on separately. If that doesn't work, then I just take them single, or them from the single point of view over here, and then just take them extra, or like one after the other. Okay, so I'm gonna take one square with me as well for the texture atlas, just in case, and maybe I'm gonna take some empty circle here as well. So just the basic shapes. Why? Because I could change my mind later on. I don't necessarily want to go back and redesign it, or I need to reuse things over there. So I can go later on and redesign all of these things. Also, I can take this little square and make it later on sketch or stretchable over the complete field if necessary. Gonna create simple buttons with the same effect literally, as well as a simple input fields and so on. What you don't need in Unity is text. So please don't ruin yourself, your projects, whatever, by exporting things which have text on it, except it's something like that, which is a graphical thing. So meaning whenever you put text somewhere, it can happen that you want to reduce or increase size. On graphics, it can look horrible, but text fields, like in general, like using fonts, is way better than using just created or pre-created text. If you have that, just export your graphic as PNG. Make sure you have literally transparent backgrounds. I'm not quite sure if this one is transparent. It's not. That's good. So I'm gonna take them all. I leave some space in between all of them, so Unity can later on just simply actually cut them out automatically for us. If you want to align them into something, whatever, then feel free to do so. I just hit on export, and then I go into wherever I want to export this texture atlas, and I created some folder already. I'm gonna drag my window onto the other side. You don't need to read or need to see that, I guess. So I just go into my project pretty quick. Wherever I have this new created project, and I want to make sure that I put that into the assets, into the assets folder. I'm gonna save that and hit export like here. So now I should have in my Unity, I should get a graphic inside in which I have like all the user interface things inside. As you can see, currently just a thin line, nothing inside. It seems that my size is too small. As you can see, too small, very much too small. A height of 1 literally doesn't show me anything. So what I want to do is I want to increase the height to, let's say, at least 255, maybe more, maybe less. It depends on how high you wanna or how you need the actual quality. If 255 times 16,000 is too much for you, you can, since it seems it does have not just the selection over here, I'm gonna try again. 255. Oh, like so. You see the width is now 1000 of something, and then I re-export this. So I'm gonna go into this folder pretty quick and overwrite whatever I've created, re-export it, say yes, I want to replace that, and then I go back over here. And as you can see, all the buttons, like the complete texture atlas, now is inside, and we can make almost use of that instantly. So what I click now is the UI over here and change from sprite mode single to multiple. Otherwise, we cannot make use of multiple images, and hit the sprite editor and apply the changes. So as you can see, quality over here might change a bit. So can look awful, can look bad, can look good. So depending on whatever your quality in the end is going to be, you have to increase the size of the exported images, since it's now changing from a vector to to a PNG. So I go to automatic slice and hit that button. So now each of these buttons here is going to be automatically sliced, and we should be able to make use of them no matter what. For this one over here, like for the square, I go into this little green dots and drag them inside the center over here. Not the blue one, just the green dots. So I have like a frame, like literally whenever later on I want to go and make use of that, I can just stretch automatically this corners. The quality is going to stay the same, but the center is going to stretch like it's just a white thing. And if I want to tint that, of course I have the possibility to do so. I apply the changes in the top right corner, and then I just close the sprite editor, and we can now go and do whatever we need to, like putting the buttons onto screen. So next one is, since we have a UI heavy one, a UI heavy game in this case, we're going to create a new canvas over here, and the canvas is going to be the one which is going to represent like literally the complete playfield over here. We can think about making the game in 16:10 or 16:9. If you want to go portrait mode, then you can do this as well. I'm going to go for landscape mode. So whenever we have that, we can now implement buttons. So we go into, well, that what was the wrong one. We go to UI button over here. We can put in like anything we want inside this canvas, as long as it is a UI element. And also later on, depending on whatever the camera sees and whatever the canvas is set to, it's going to stretch over the complete screen, whatever the screen is going to be. So in that case, I'm gonna go and get rid of the button just in case, and go to canvas and set the UI scale mode from constant pixel size to scale with screen size. Otherwise, you're gonna have weird stretching in the end. Once again, we can now go into this once again and say UI button. You see this automatically is smaller than the original one, because now it's going to take the real input, like however we are stretching that, the button is going to follow whatever is inside, as long as it is child of the canvas. Good. Now, what we want to what we need to do is now we take all these buttons and bring them onto our, onto our things over here, like onto our buttons over there. We want to go for preserve aspect ratio, otherwise the buttons are not going to be like we have created them inside Inkscape or whatever graphics program you are using. And now we can literally put this to wherever we want to. So the downside on this particular way, as I do it currently, is whenever we want to reposition things, we need to do it like any time. So in that case, before we're going to take buttons, we can create something called, well, just an image. And this image is going to be now my placeholder, which I can make use of by, making it resizable, making it draggable. And I'm gonna take my button and make a child of that. I'm gonna reposition this to 0, 0 of the image. And now what I can do is I can drag it literally wherever I want to. I get rid of the text element of the button because I don't need this, as you have seen in my preview. This image in the background is now just my button holder, I would say, for one specific bar. So a button bar. And now we can duplicate this button. Currently we don't have any options or actions or whatever they are. We can snap them together. We can literally space them over here. And once again, we just make them so that they are snapping onto the center of our image over here. And now we can literally take this image, resize it if necessary, not even most of the time not necessary, depending on however you want to arrange these things. We can add a horizontal layout group into it if we want to, like into the image itself. So all the child objects are going to follow this bar. Now we have this bar and we can position this one and rescale it however we want to, as long as the buttons are going to be scalable here as well. So for the moment we have like this buttons. We can always check out our layout we had done before. So in that case it was way smaller, like only 3 times into the size, like left to right. And so what we want to make sure is that these are going to scale automatically with the image itself. So whenever we scale this one down, we want to make sure that this is going to work here as well. So, and how do we do this is we can make use of these little anchors, which are going to sit over here. So currently we anchor this one to itself, but we can also make it uniform stretch if we want to. But also, since currently it's badly seen because the background is white, we can for the moment just make the bar background literally transparent. And now you can see over here, these are the anchors of the image at the moment, but also these buttons over here do have anchors and currently anchored to the actual position of the actual image over there. What we can do is with these anchors, we can put them wherever the buttons are. And this way, we make sure that whenever we resize this image over here, that these are going to follow as well. You can see over here, this button is going to rescale automatically with its size or with the size of the image as well. What we can now try is we can literally just take the changed one, duplicate it, Control D, and see what's happening now whenever we do the same, like whenever we resize that. As you can see, it automatically stretches down the actual buttons in height. Oh, that was wrong. We want to redo that. And if you are not happy with that, you can always take those little anchors and put them over there as well. Good. So now we can literally take our little bar over here and we can scale it down, but also we don't really reposition them, so we would need to do some other anchoring over here as well. But once again, once you have the size in place and so on and so forth, we can simply once again change the bar position to wherever we want to. We can try to rescale, but you will need to go and check it out on your own. Now we have 3 more buttons. The most important ones I was telling you before is the fishing button, the shovel button, and so on. And these 4 buttons, by the way, you can simply just go in and change them to whatever they have to be. Like, I go pretty quickly through them. You can also see in the bottom of the preview of the button, you can see what are these buttons going to be about over here. So there's the star one, pretty good, and now it starts to look yeah, like however we want it to look. If you don't like the blue background over here, and the main camera is the one which is going to create this solid color, so you can always go white if you want to, or just, you know, use any font or any colors overall. So up to you how you want to change that. The game bar or the game view as well as the scene view, you should keep them always next to each other in any case, so you can always see whenever you do changes in the scene view, you always can control and check out if the game looks how it should look. Okay, so far so good. We have the button bar over here. Now we need to have the other bars, like the other buttons literally. So for those, since they are literally freely floating around somewhere, we don't know where we want to have them, we just create simple easy new ones. So I go and create a new button over here, change the sprite to be, let's see, the fishing sprite as an example. I'm gonna make them preserve aspect ratio again, so I can, you know, resize them to whatever I like to. I get rid of the text component since I don't need this on my buttons over here, and then I just replace the fish, or yeah, reorganize them however and wherever I want them. As you can see, the size doesn't really matter since the preserving aspect ratio is going to take place over here. I'm gonna duplicate it whenever I'm happy, bring the other one for here and the last one for somewhere here. And of course I go and change these buttons now to be, this one is a shovel, this one here should, no, this one is not a shovel. But I can just rearrange them in a second. Like we have this one over here as well. So once again, it doesn't really matter where they are as long as we have later on all the options for them. As you can see, only just taking stuff and dragging it around and so on is also taking quite some time already. And yeah, that's what you always need to keep in mind. Like whenever you create stuff, it's absolutely necessary that you understand that things are taking time. So please do yourself a favor and do not overdo it over here. What I mean by that is only do or only create whatever you can create. So if you have nobody who is going to create the graphics for you and you are unable to do it, then yeah, maybe you skip that part or find somebody who's going to do this for you. So, but most of you guys are going to be indie developers probably, and so you're gonna have to find out the best for yourself, how stuff or how you can actually get around all the problems you have. Like, I have a problem with setting up user interface. Okay, that's not a deal, or that is your own deal. Then you need to find out, okay, how can I actually take care of that? How can I get better? Like, try to train yourself into creating graphics, replacing graphics if necessary, and so on and so forth. Or do the other way, like a lot of people which don't have like graphic skills at all, they go to the asset store wherever they can literally grab some icons to play around with and purchase them. That is also another option. Good, so far so good. We have now the canvas. We have like 7 buttons over here. I'm gonna have to implement even more things. And first off, I want to anchor this image bar to the top left. So I hold on Alt and select this anchor over here. So you can see it's automatically anchoring itself to this position. So meaning whenever I have another resolution and so on, this bar is always going to stay on top over there at this particular position, no matter what. Good, with that out of the way, we need to have a coin, but that doesn't need to be a button, it just needs to be a graphic. So I can just say, okay, I create a new empty image literally, and this image is going to hold my little coin, this one, my coin graphic. I make this also aspect ratio, so it always stays and be the correct size. I can put it wherever I want to. Once again, also we need to have a text field, which is going to be that, going to represent all of that. You can make it, if you want to, a child of the actual coin image. So I'm gonna rename this coin image. Renaming, by the way, or renaming items is always key over there. So whenever you work with other people together on a project, make sure that they know what stuff is going to be for and about. I'm gonna take this Make this one a super black one. Currently I don't have any other font, but now would be the part in which you can implement your own font, so whichever you have purchased or created, whatever, and then implement them. I make it bold and I make it best fit over there, so it always fits the best whatever the size of the text field is going to be, no matter in which resolution you are going to be about finally. And what we want to put in just as a placeholder is something like 1 point something, or 1.000.000, whatever the amount, the maximum amount of your game is going to be about, something like that, maybe 1 million coins. And that's literally it. Once again, make a control check on your view, always like on your game view. So whenever you later on go and play the game, you're going to see what the real size is going to be about. And since we have like a basic resizing already based on the canvas, we later on just need to anchor the actual graphics to the correct position, so we don't have any strange things later on going to happen over there. Good. So far so good. The next one is we want to have like 2 bars, like a stamina bar as well as the bar about the digging itself. Like whenever we reduce digging, like reducing sand, we want to showcase that with a bar as well as with a number. So basically both is going to work. And we're going to create this rather simple over there as well. First off, we're going to create an image, and I'm going to make it, I make it white maybe. I need more than one. I'm gonna stretch this over here. Maybe I'll make it black as being the background for my for the bar in the center. Then I need to have a white one, so I just hit Control D. We can once again rename things, like being the big G or BG stamina, or maybe just a stamina. Oh no, it's not the stamina, it's a the sand bar. And that is just the background. When we now put some other bar above it or below it as a child, it lies above it. So when I make this one white, I don't see the black one anymore behind it. This is good. So now we can just go and reduce some sizes here and there. I'm gonna resize some stuff here and there, so I have like literally a border around the graphic. You're gonna once again want to check what it does look later on in the final result. So maybe that's a bit too small, so maybe I make a bit more present, make it in the center, see if that kind of fits. You can be as picky as you want to and as precise as you want to, but make sure that you see everything inside your game view later on. And I duplicate this one, which is going to be later on the actual bar, and make this one a child of the second bar, which is just going to be the background of the background, like to have a frame in the end. And this one is going to be black again, so I keep my design literally up and running. I'm gonna make some space here and there, center this one to the actual one, gonna reorganize that as much as necessary, and in the final result we're gonna have something like that. If we hit the play button and we go into maximize on play, like so, I want to make sure that everything keeps or stays kind of where they are, and how does it in the final result is going to look. So what I want to make sure is that this bar itself, like the complete send bar over here, is going to be anchored on top. So I go to hold down Alt and select this anchor on top, and then I drag it away from this point. And if I'm not quite sure where this is going to be about, then I'm gonna take the anchoring for these corners and bring them into position so they don't reduce themselves. So what I can now do is I can center this one out over here, and the final one is going to be our UI text for this particular bar. We're gonna bring it maybe over here or maybe inside this bar, but I guess we're gonna keep on doing this as we did before. I center everything out. I'm gonna make it bold, and I want to make best fit. I'm gonna change the color to black, and I reduce it as much as necessary. So, and in here we're gonna put something like 1 million. And if you want to, you can also take the current ones like so. So whatever the original amount is going to be minus, or whatever the current amount is going to be. Once again, a design decision you can literally take on your own. I want to make sure that this one's centered as I did already, and there we go. So now we have our complete send bar over here. Whenever we drag it around, the numbers are going to follow here as well. So far so good. So we have literally everything in place. Now basically we can start to code. We don't need to have the background. We don't need to have like things in the background, at least not for the moment. But later on, like in the second phase or third phase, whenever you go for nice graphics, want to make some mountains in the background, maybe you want to show something like putting or creating some rock images over here, bringing them into the scene, so it builds up nicely, but at the moment it's not necessary, as I can tell. So for the canvas and for all the inputs, we basically have everything set up. We have our coins, we have like coin text, which we're gonna have to rename for later usage, and that's it. Now we just need to go and create systems, the systems for doing all of the management in the background. For doing so, first off, I want to create some new folder, and this folder is going to be just our, well, not a C# file, a folder in which we're going to put all the scripts for us, or we want to put them in. You can name it script or scripts, something like that. And then here we're going to put like everything. We want to keep, or we want to stay focused. We want to make sure that everything is keeping organized. Whenever we later on need to change something, that we don't look through thousands of things we don't know about. Okay, so what we have is a game manager, which is going to manage literally everything inside the game, meaning everything which is going to you know go and continuously run in the background. Whatever, we're gonna have some numbers later on going up and so on and so forth. We're gonna take a look into this later on as well. So whenever we open this one, we you can use Visual Studio, which is currently the only one which is shipped with Unity itself, or you just download it. I'm using a develop a strange mono develop or mono behavior version, but a mono develop version, but it doesn't matter at all. Since these it still works quite nicely. I just have to click away some things over here, but everything will run on my side, and on yours it should be as well. If you are working with Visual Studio, make sure, 100% sure, that autocomplete is going to work. What does it mean is whenever you work on something and you don't have autocomplete in place, you will never find issues. That means when you start coding, like, okay, I want to do a transform something, you want to make sure that you get this menu open over there and make sure that transform is going to be something you can pick from. Like everything else, like everything which is based on mono behavior and all the other good stuff, as well as .NET, of course. So when that is working, like when these numbers or these letters in even in Visual Studio are like this greenish color or bluish color over there, then you know you're on the right track because everything has been loaded completely. So if yours doesn't autocomplete, make sure it does it. So fix it until it works. Okay, so our game manager, I usually get rid of start and update, since usually we barely use them, and when we need them, then of course we're gonna implement them again. So what we want to have is instant access to the game manager wherever we are. We can create a public static game manager instance for that. This is called a singleton. And singletons are, well, basically, singletons are usually make use of, so whenever we need to talk to one specific instance of a game manager, we can also use just static variables, which is going to work basically the same way, but then everything based on that needs to be static as well, like static coin amount, static this, static that. So whenever we hop from one scene to another, then of course it makes sense to have static variables. Otherwise we just need public ones, and it doesn't really matter at all. So for singletons, we can always find the current game manager instance, and then we pick it and take care of whatever is inside. And we can also talk to it as long as it is public. So static means just it is a static member we can always talk to, and you can always go and hover over and see what these are going to be about. So when we are taking a look into the game manager, what we have is some things like we have an integer for our current coins. We want to take a look into these. We want to keep track of them and update them accordingly. And this is basically everything we need over there, since that is the only way to upgrade things, to get things. But also when we have like different stones, for example, or different things we can dig from somewhere, and as well as the sand amount, then of course we want to have this over there. So int sand. I don't use floats since I don't need comma numbers over here, but if you want to use floats, then of course you are able to do so. So later on we need to convert these integers into floats whenever we go and dig deeper into these health bars, or into the sand bar as well as the stamina bar. And speaking of stamina, we also have an integer of a stamina over here. And what else do we need? Well, we currently need something like, we can make it simple at the first place, something like int food or fish. You can name it whatever you like. If you later on make use of multiple fish arts or fish types, as then we can make a fish array or something and then fill in data. We can go over that later on as well. And we're gonna have a stone. So a stone which we can literally pick up somewhere, and then we can sell it. And this is the problem this is the first problem. It's managing all of these contents. The easiest one is getting a coin. And maybe later on we can also implement something like clicks. How often has a player clicked? This is going to be useful later on for, let's say, achievements, when, as I explained at the very beginning, like when, we click something, we're gonna implement click, or this clicks, and whenever we have like 10,000 clicks or something, then we get an achievement. This achievement can be, depending on what you wanna make with that achievement, then we can, put this into the game and give a reward for the player that he has like done 1,000 clicks or something. So with that out of the way, this is the base, the bare bone basically of everything over there. We want to go and create some functions which are taking care of coins. Like, how do we get a coin? And what is the amount of coins we want to add to our current coin amount? Also, whenever we talk to coins, we also want to have a text element which is going to be the upgraded or updated one. We can make use of that inside a user interface manager, in which we can talk to and say, okay, user interface manager dot something dot text, update this with the coins text, with the current coins text. For sand, same for stamina, same for the other ones over there. We can always go and just fill in data from the game manager. If you want to keep it like all in one place, that's okay, but maybe not a good idea at this point, since there's going to be quite a lot. But if you want to keep them all over here, we want to have, or we need to have something like a public text field. As you can see, I cannot put in text because we don't have the user interface namespace. So this namespace is called using Unity Engine .ui. This is necessary for images, for text elements, for all the other good stuff over here. And we can name this one coins text. Once again, I do not recommend doing this in the game manager. I recommend doing this in an extra manager, which we can later on access through a singleton. And speaking of the singleton, we need to have a function called wake to declare what this instance is going to be about. In that case, we say instance is equal to this. So it literally subscribes, this script subscribes to being the only instance for this particular, let's say, game, or for this particular scene. So whenever we call it, we know, okay, the static game manager instance is this particular instance from which this script is basically getting called. So with that out of the way as well, we just need to have accessors. So we can do something like get and set over here for the coins, so we can talk to them, or even not. We can keep on, we can try to override them, or we can just keep it as simple as we want to, meaning we just create a void for coins, or for adding coins, void add coins. And then we can put in an argument over here, which is the integer, let's say the amount we want to add. So some may give you more, some may give you less, as well as we want to remove later on coins. So we of course can put in a negative number over here, and plus and minus, like mathematic wise, are going to give you a minus anyways. So we can add and remove coins. So add and remove coins. And what we want to do is we want to take coins and update it with the incoming amount. So we say plus equal amount. And when we buy something and we put a negative number over here, then it will negate coins. Also, later on, you can always do, by the way, commands over here, like you do 2 slashes, and then you put in any command, or you do slash asterisk, then you go down and put another slash over here, and you can put commands in this particular part, and you can increase and decrease that for how much information you need to put inside. So, next one is we want to update our UI whenever we do something, meaning whenever we add it, we want to talk to the user interface, like to the text over here, and update it accordingly. In that case, for our case at the moment, we can say coins text dot text is equal to coins dot to string, because we need to convert it to a string. Dot to string. Open close parentheses, close the line with a semicolon. What we can do is over here we can also format the string, like using this one, and then I'm not quite sure. There we go. We can do different currencies, like we can put a euro over there, or we can do different ones at this point. We can also take numbers like this one over here. So there will be something like an N, and if we want to make use decimals, then we use a D, and N in this case can also be kept to a specific amount of numbers, like N9 would have like 9 numbers in maximum over here, or just N, it's just reformatting whatever it is. Same for if we want to make use of decimals. As you can see, it's just full numbers, no commas, no points, not something. This is totally up to you, whatever you want to make use of. As you can see, commas, numbers are going to be with a comma in the background. And since we are not using floats but integers, we probably want to make use of something else. Like maybe round ones, or maybe fixed point numbers. I don't know. Once again, you can take a look into this on your complete own. And that's it. So whenever we add and remove a coin, we just say plus equal whatever the amount is. So if it is a 1, then of course we add 1, and so on and so forth, and then we update that. The downside on that is, since we only have this coin text right now over there, we don't know where we start, and so we need to update this one accordingly. Whenever we start the game, as an example, we want to have the correct coin amount. Like if we say, okay, there is 100 coins already inside the pool, we want to make sure that the coins are going to be updated at the very start of the game here as well. And for doing so, we may or may not, if it is necessary, you can decide this on your own. You can create another function for that, like update coin UI. And so we don't need to pass in any parameters, but we need to call this function. So we literally take this and bring this into another function, like so. Well, not like so, but Control X, Control V, like so. Since we just updated over here, we need to call now update coin UI over there. And so we can also call update coin whenever the game starts, like literally after awake or in the start function. So whenever the game starts, so we can say void start. I know I deleted this one, but now we can implement it or re-implement it. And we say update coin UI, open close parentheses, close the line with a semicolon. Hi Fishman, thanks a lot for tuning in. So now we have like a complete updatable coin amount, and we can do the same for the sand. We can do the same for the stamina. So whenever we use something, we reduce it. When we're gonna, whenever we get stuff back, we increase it. So for stamina, we have like a maximum at the moment. So I need to define how much is the maximum stamina over here. And the sand is also going to have a maximum of 1 million or whatever the number is we are going to take a look into. So I can instantly set this one to be 1 million. I need to make sure it's like 6 numbers over here. I'm gonna save, of course, my script since I have done quite some things. And we want to reduce sand. We never ever want to increase sand. If you want to keep or make use of static sand over there, then you can do so. So you can literally always go reduce sand, or you're going to do basically the same as here. We just create another void, remove sand. We're going to trigger or take a look into how we trigger them in a second. Remove sand, open close parentheses. And we can, if we want to, also put a different amount, like when we have an upgraded shovel, or we have somebody who's going to do the work for us, we can put in any amount, literally, like say -100, and then we just put the amount literally over to the sand. So we're gonna say sand, and usually we can also always go and put a positive number whenever we say minus equal amount over here. Simple mathematics. Goodbye, Fishman. So so what we can do is we can then also update the send amount over there. So whatever the send is, we need to have a send UI. Like we need to upgrade the bar in the top, as well as the send amount over there, like being a text. So in that case, we're gonna have like a bar. I'm gonna name it's just a, what is it, an image, I guess. And it needs to be a public image. Public image. Just again, this is my, let's say, send bar image. And we want to actually also talk to the send bar, so we want to update it whenever this changes. We want to change the length of the bar over here. And how do we do this? Is rather simple. It's just, again, a simple mathematics. The scale of the image, whenever we created that, is going to be the current amount divided by itself, or by the current send amount by the maximum send amount. So in here we can also put something like max send, and in start, or wherever we want to, we can set max send to be equal to whatever the send is, and we later on reduce send, and then we can literally calculate them. One divided by the other is going to be, or give us, a percentage between 0 and 1, and that is where the scale of the send bar is going to become in place. So in that case, we want to do set max send to be equal to send whenever we start the game. Pretty simple. So it just puts 1 million into maximum send. If you don't like this, you can also say max send is equal to 1 million or whatever. So we have like removing the send right now. Now we want to update everything about the send. So in that case, we want to say update send UI. Open close parentheses, and we read now the data and convert it to a useful data. So in that case, we're gonna say the send percentage, send percent, a bit strange, is equal to, and now we need to typecast our integers into floats, otherwise we don't get a common number in the end. And the send percent over here is going to represent a float, so we just declare a temporary float over here, and calculate it whenever it's just necessary. So whenever we update the send UI, we want to recalculate the send percentage over here. We don't need to do this in update like constantly, because it's not necessary overall. So what we can do now is we take send and divide send by maximum send. So, but first off, we need to once again convert them, or in this case typecast them into floats. So float send divided by float max send. So the send percentage is going to be the actual send amount, 1 million, divided by maximum send. And if we are starting over here, if send is 1 million and maximum send is going to be 1 million, then 1 million divided by 1 million is equal to 1. So the send percentage over here would be, in this case, a 1, or would represent a scale of 1. 1 in that case is going to be 100%. If it is 0.5, because we have like half the send, like 500,000 divided by, and you can always take your calculator over here, 500,000 divided by 1 million should give you a 0.5. So this is like the scale amount of our send bar in the end. I hope you got it. I think so. So what we now set is our send bar dot scale x, like this local scale. Send bar, I believe so. Maybe it's a rect transform dot local scale. Now we need to set it to whatever it has to be. And so we don't want to touch the y-axis, we don't want to touch the z-axis, we only want to touch the x-axis over here. So in that case, we need to create a new vector3, since we need to split that numbers, and in x we're going to put in the cent %, the one we calculated, and we don't want to touch the other ones. So literally we should be able to set this one to 1 and 1. If that doesn't work, we can also say localscale.x and localscale.z, or localscale y and localscale z. That's once again completely up to you. I believe 1 and 1 should be pretty much okay over here. So, and what we need to do is, of course, whenever we remove send, we want to update the send UI over here as well. I hope you got it. So let's take a look into the buttons. So whenever we click on a button, we want to remove send, or we want to get a coin. Well, not a coin at this point, but let's remove some send whenever we are in play mode. And to do so, whenever we want to talk to a specific, let's say, option, we need to make sure that we have access to it, right? And in that case, we need to make sure that remove send is going to be a public function over here. So we say public void remove send. I hit save, Control S for quick save. When we go back to Unity, of course, we want to see if we have any issues with that, like if the console is giving us any typos, errors, whatever. If you don't have one, of course, that's good. But if you do so, then you want to see what is the problem, double click the error message and take a look into it. So removing send is going to be this particular button over here, in which we have like our nice shovel symbol. And each button has an on-click event. And in on-click events, we can put in functions, scripts, whatever. We can hit the plus over here, and now we can drag in any game object, but currently we don't have one which has our game manager on it. So we just create a new empty one. I name this one game manager. The position of the game manager doesn't matter, since we don't need to directly talk to it. We just need to have a placeholder. You could put the script literally also onto the main camera, it doesn't matter. Gonna drag it over here. Now we have like our coins text and our send bar. We don't have the send text over here, which we're gonna implement in a sec. And we now need to find the coin text and bring this over here to the coin text. And then we have the send bar, which is going to be the second bar over here, which is going to be the one which we want to have to scale around. When we click on that, you're going to see this little blue dot in the center. And also you can see the scale here is x1, y1, and z1 on the rect transform. When I now go into scale mode, like over here, and scale it over x, you're going to see what's going to happen. It reduces the size over x from the center. If you don't want to do this, and by the way, here are the numbers, so once again we can instantly go back to 1, because that's the actual scale we are working with. If you want to have it so that it is like going from left to right, like it empties out itself from the right side to the left side, you can always go to these anchor settings once again. We have two possibilities. We have the pivot point, which we are going to be able to access with using Shift. I hold down Shift and click this one. If I now go scale over X, you're going to see that the bar is going to go and reduce itself like from left to right. But the scale still is the same. So with that out of the way, we should now be able to access the send bar, the actual second send bar over here, by just reducing that whenever we click onto this button. Okay, so whenever we now have this little button over here, go back a bit so we can touch that. First off, we need to drag in our game manager, of course, into the game object. We go to game manager, and now we find the remove send integer function we created just beforehand. And what we can tell is like whatever amount we want to reduce whenever we click on this particular button. Later on, if we have like shovel upgrades and all the other stuff, of course we want to make sure that these ones are like upgradable, and these numbers are going to be, you know, resizable in a case of whenever we upgrade something, that we do not make 1 as a click on, but maybe a 10 or 100 or 1000. Let me do a high number of 1000 and press play and see what's going on whenever we click onto our little shovel button. You should now take a look onto the bar over here. Whenever we click on this, we want to, or we will see something. I click very fast over here. You can see that the bar is going to reduce automatically its size based on the amount of sand we have left. Pretty good, so that works now. And if we make a higher number over here, like 100 or 10,000 or 100,000, let's see, 100,000 looks good. So we can click literally 10 times onto this button to reduce this bar, because once again the numbers are 1 million and 1 million. If I do once again click, you're gonna see that, oh no, that is bad. This needs to be clamped between 0 and its maximum value. And that's what we want to protect here as well. Like this cent percent cannot be a negative number. We want to keep this number always between 0 and 1. And for that we have another function which is called massf.clamp01. So we want to set cent percent. Literally we can also keep the cent itself being between 0 and 1 million. That also works. So we can say cent is equal to massf dot clamp, and we have this 01, which means it's a clamping between 0 and 1, but this is not a rounded or anything number. We're gonna need to say clamp so we can put in our own value. So first off, we need to declare what do we want to clamp is of course the sand amount. Then we need to say the lowest value is a 0 and the maximum value is going to be whatever the maximum sand amount is going to be. And now we should be able to clamp sand between these amounts, and so we don't need to recalculate the limits for the user interface. Don't forget to save, and let's go back and check it out. If I'm too fast, just come back later. But I want to give you some ideas and quick take a look at. So whenever we click on this, and I can now keep on clicking, you probably hear that, you're gonna see that this bar is not reducing itself automatically anymore because it's clamped between 0 and 1 million. Pretty good. So now we have protected this one to not underflow in any case, and we have now a clickable solution for that. And later on, we're going to take a look into how we can actually upgrade this one. Like when we have like 10 possible upgrades or anything else, then of course we are able to do this over here as well. By the way, if you guys have any questions in between or whatever, then just feel free to ask them. Meanwhile, this live stream is going to run. And so next one is literally the same for these numbers in the top over here. We wanna bring it so that the sand amount is also going to be represented by this text field at the top. And so we have now the current sand, we have the maximum sand, we have the sand bar, and now we need to have like a public text element over here again, which is going to represent the actual sand text. And as you have seen, that it was a bit different in case of setup, like it's not like a coin text, which is just a simple text over here. We also have the slash in between, as well as the lowest number and the maximum number. And to do that, we just need to talk to this particular send text over here, and let's say we need to reorganize that or reformat this particular text. So we can say send text.text is going to be equal to, and now the actual fill in is going to become in place. So the first thing we want to see is the current send amount. So send dot toString, and I didn't check the other number over there, but we're gonna put in an F, for example. Then we want to see a slash, like a slash in between these numbers, like since the second one is going to be the maximum number. So we put in two pluses, or one plus over here, another string variable, and put the slash over here. If you want to have space in between the slash and the number, you can also put some spaces over here. It will be noticed. Then we have another plus. The next one is going to be the maximum send amount. So we say send.toString, open close parentheses. We can put in an F if that is a good one. We'll see in a second. And then we can end this. And of course, we don't want to have like two times toString. Just once is more than enough. And that's basically it. Whenever we now update the send UI, we want to update the send text here for that as well. So whenever we remove send. And at the very beginning, if we want to, we can also say in start, we want to update the send UI here as well with the amount, but we need to make sure that we do this after we have set the send or the maximum send to be the send amount. Pretty good. Don't forget to save, and let's take a look into the numbers in the top, however they look. We'll see in a second. Whatever F is doing. So it seems that F is doing whatever we wanted to do, but we get an error. The null reference exception over here means, oh, we forgot something. And whenever we hit null reference exceptions, we can, one, double click the message and see where it leads to. You guys probably already know what's going on over here. But if you don't know what it's going to be on, then you try to understand what's going to happen over here. And then here it says, in Game Manager, remove send. It is trying to do something or access something which is not there. And the which is not there is the null reference exception over there. So whenever you put or go in or bring yourself into this position, you go into the Game Manager, of course, and you see, oh no, we forgot to implement the send text. This is where the null references usually come from. So we have like this send text over here. I just go and rename it so I've later on know what's going on with that send text. Hit enter to apply. And now we bring send text into the send text field. Don't forget to save your scene in between, like meanwhile do changes and all the other good stuff, and then come back and test again. And this null reference should now be gone. So whenever we hit play, we're gonna see some strange number over here. So F is not a good number for me, so maybe I'm gonna go in with another one. So now whenever I click on this one, you're gonna see what's going to happen over there. I reduce the number over here. By the way, you can always press the pause button and see what's going on. Like, I don't remember what I set this button over here for. I reset it to 1, so that's correct in this particular case. So reducing one of these numbers over here, from the 1 million, is 100% correct. So now I'm gonna take a look into what we can do with n as a number over here, like as a format, because f doesn't look nice for me. I take a look into n. If I don't like n, then I probably go with something else. Or maybe I can reformat stuff like with n as 0, so we don't have, hopefully, the common numbers. Well, nope, we do have them with n over here. But, well, as you can see, everything works. And that is pretty much the effect I wanted. So, and we can also say, okay, we want to reduce 20,000 at a time. Whenever we click on the button, that is absolutely possible for this one here as well. So we can reduce this number over here. I can keep on clicking until the bar is empty. Later on, once again, this is part of the game. And whenever we are 0, of course, we are unable to undo it because we clamped it to be at maximum of 0. I try to find another one which I can make use of, in which maybe just some points are in between, but no common numbers for full numbers, literally. If you guys find some, then just let me know. But I guess, on the other hand, we could probably also go with decimals, so we don't have any common numbers, but also maybe no decimal points, like every 1,000 with a point. I'm not quite sure how that works, but this is something we shouldn't really take care of. So when we go with decimals, we probably don't have the points in between. But there might be some possibility to have this points in between, so we can literally read it easier. Okay, but that's basically everything we need to have for numbers, reducing stuff like reducing sand. We now have a bar which is going to work over here as well, and now we can go for anything else. Like as an example, we can now go and dig fish. So, or like go fishing, so we have something to eat. We currently, by the way, don't have our stamina bar, it seems. So what we want to, I guess this is going to be the next step. Whenever we make any action, like we click on one of these 3 buttons, we want to reduce stamina and maybe over time increase stamina, like constantly between the minimum and the maximum stamina amount over there, which is going to be, once again, between 0 and 1. or 50 or 100 or whatever it is. So literally we do the same setup for this particular or for the stamina bar over here. What we can do is we can just duplicate this if we want to make use of that as it is. And so I have like 2 sandbars right now. I want to drag it away so we can work with that. And I'm going to rename it, of course, to be stamina bar. So we know what's going on over here. Then we have like these 2 bars, which just be the bars of the whatever. And then we have something like between 0 and 50. Or literally a 50-50 at the beginning. So we can do 50 clicks. And later on we can probably go and, you know, reduce other things here as well. So this is also stamina BG or something. And then we have the actual bar. ST bar, whatever, so we find it easier later on. And we can, once again, literally place it wherever we want to. We can make it above or below the actual coin image over here. Again, if we take the coin image away, the text is going to follow at this point as well. So we take the stamina bar in this particular case, bring it maybe over here in between, or we can also put it anywhere else, doesn't really matter. At least not for the moment, and at least not for the current yet. Let's say issue or something. Okay, good. So now let's go and do some stamina reduction, as well as everything we need for the stamina at all. So in that case, we now have everything about, you can also put some commands over here, everything about stone or sand, everything about coins. We can also put in some headers if we like to see stuff easier. We can put a header over here in square brackets. And in open close parentheses, we can put in like any string, everything about sand if we want to. It probably doesn't look or doesn't show 100% if we are with the header above a private value, but we'll see that whenever we get the point. So in here we do have like our header for stamina. Again, if there's something or if there's nothing coming afterwards, like being private, this is not visible at all. Just keep that in mind. So we have a stamina, and then we probably have something like maximum stamina, like so. So whatever maximum stamina is, and we start with a stamina of 50. Later on we can override it if we want to, and also we need to update stamina or the maximum stamina whenever we do updates at all. So, and that's basically, I guess, everything we need for stamina. No, we do need the bar itself and the text element, of course. So we need to have the image for our stamina bar, which we can later on, once again, hook up into the game manager, as well as we need to have a public text in which we see our stamina text. If you find any typos or whatever, or if you have typos, no worries about it, then just correct them whenever necessary. Okay, and later on we do have also the other headers about fish and so on and so forth. I'm gonna show you what these headers are going to look in a second. So in here we can also put a header. We can also use spaces to keep spaces in between different things. Whenever they are public, of course, then they are visible, otherwise they're not. So, and everything about coins is going to land over here. If you want to work with public variables, this is also for debugging probably the best way to see how much real coins you're going to have and so on and so forth. But as you can see and will feel over runtime or later on, is you don't really need to have them like public variables. We can simply just read them from text elements if there are connected text elements. So as you can see, we haven't done much code actually, but we still are on a good track. We can simply go into that and update everything accordingly. Good. So what we now need is everything about stamina. So we want to reduce stamina on click, and we want to reduce stamina or increase stamina over time. So first off, we have something like a void remove stamina. We can also say something like remove and add stamina, because both are the same functionalities, just by having a positive or a negative value as a amount. So int amount, like so. Okay, so what we now need to do is whenever we remove stamina, we want to say stamina minus equal whatever amount is. But also we can say we're gonna do this the other way, like plus equal amount, so we can also get stamina back, literally, from whatever function is going to call that. So we rename this, or I rename this remove and add stamina, because both is possible in any case. So whenever we do this, we want to make sure that we clamp stamina between numbers again. So stamina is equal to massf.clamp. So we clamp, nope, not cosine, clamp between 0 and whatever the maximum stamina is going to be. So whenever we change later on maximum stamina, it will also react to it, of course. Of course, we forgot to implement what is the value we want to keep track on, or what we want to clamp is, of course, stamina itself. So stamina is equal to clamped it to itself between 0 and that. No, the update method, hi Baxter, we're gonna take a look into this in just a second, so if you give me some time to explain it, update is not the best way to call a function every second. There are 3 possibilities for that. I'm gonna talk about them in, just give me a minute or two so we can take a look into how we can increase the stamina over time. We want to remove and add the stamina to, of course, increase stamina over time, as I just talked about a minute ago, but also we want to reduce it whenever we click on, or whenever we do an action. Like we want to reduce or remove send, of course. But also we want to visualize that, as we already did with the update send method, or like we do with the update send method for the user interface. What I do is I'm going to copy this complete number, not number, but function, and put this like right below it over here. And then here we want to update the stamina UI. So in that case, we need to now have a stamina percent over here. We calculate this between our current stamina and the maximum stamina. We're gonna take the stamina bar dot rect transform local scale and take stamina percent as being the one which is going to be the necessary one. And then, of course, we need to update the stamina text with our current stamina and the maximum stamina. I hope you got it. We just literally take the same one, we just copy paste things around, we just rename things over here with a stamina percent, which is going to be the calculated one, in which we take the current one and divide it by the maximum one, so we always have the correct percentage of the bar in the top. So later on, when we once again upgrade maximum stamina to 100, 1000, whatever it can be, then we can also recalculate the complete, let's say, length on the bar itself by whatever the current one is divided by its maximum amount. Good. So we also have like our decimal ones, and whenever we now add or remove stamina, we want to update the stamina user interface. That's what we basically do in the send as well. So we reduce send or update send. We want to update this here as well. Okay, so that's basically everything. So what we now want to do is whenever we remove send, we want to remove one stamina point. So in that case, we can call remove and add stamina, open close parentheses, and what it needs is now our argument, the argument of the amount. So we say -1. So whenever we now click on remove a send, we're gonna make use of one stamina. We're gonna call remove stamina, then we update the stamina amount. Let's take a look if that works. I'm gonna save everything, go back to Unity, let it compiler run, see if there are any issues. Make sure your console is always on screen as well as the other ones. We have something like maximum stamina, which is never used, so we need to take care of that in start as well. So we say maximum stamina is equal to stamina. So whenever we start with 50, as you can see over here, we do the same as we do with start. We just override maximum stamina with the current stamina, and then we hit save. Pretty good. And so this issue, the warning, should go away as well, because we do make use of that. As you can see, everything works fine now, or should work fine now. What we now need to have is the connection to the game manager from the stamina values over here. So we have the actual, I'm gonna need to rename this because it's not send text but stamina text. Stamina text. Once again, naming convention is king. Go to the game manager. Now we drag stamina bar or stamina text into stamina text field, and stamina bar, for me st bar, into this stamina bar image over here. Don't forget to save your scene and press play again. What we can see, by the way, the headers are not shown because they are above private values. So as you can see, we now have a 50-50. We don't have any issues or anything else. If I now hit the shovel, you're gonna see that we of course shovel or dig something down over here. And we can also see, okay, we have now stamina reduced as well. I tried to reduce it to be a negative number, like whenever we have nothing else left. We keep on clicking, but nothing works. Now the next issue is we wanna perform this click over here only when we have enough stamina left, right? So when we have no stamina, we cannot perform the click. So in that case, we can go and make a simple check on the remove send function. We do not just want to remove the send, but we only want to do this whenever we have enough stamina left. So we do just a simple if statement. So if stamina is literally smaller equals 0, then we don't want to perform whatever comes afterwards. So in that case, we just say return. So we just return at the point. We can also say if it is equals 0, but usually that does not work. Well, it doesn't work on floating numbers, but on integers it does work. So once again, if we don't have stamina left, we just return. Return means we just break out of the complete function. We perform it on the next click, yes, but we do not perform everything which is going to be below. You can also put a debug line. Oh no, you don't have enough stamina left. You cannot perform the rest which is coming after over here. And you can always check if that triggers 100%, like I'm gonna save that over here. And I maybe reduce the amount I'm going to dig away. Like I go to my digging button. I just should rename them as well so I find them easier. I just do something like a 10 per click. So we see whenever we have like 50 clicks done, then we wanna, we don't wanna reduce the amount in the top whenever we don't have any stamina left. So I'm gonna click through pretty quickly over here. And now when I click now again, you can see this number doesn't change whenever I keep on clicking because we will keep track of stamina right now. And same for later on whenever we do any other action like fishing, like digging, using the pickaxe and all the other good stuff. How do we now go and get back stamina? So there are a couple of possibilities we do have. There are things like called coroutines. There are things like called not just coroutine but invoke and invoke repeating. First off, let's create a method which we can invoke or invoke repeat. And as you can see, the actual remove and add stamina function, we have created that already. So we literally can just internally call this function by an invoke or invoke repeating method. Let's take a look how that looks. First off, we want to make sure in start that everything started already. We also want to make sure is that we call the function repeatedly over time. So we type in invoke repeating, and as you can see, we need to call a string method name as well as a time as well as a repeat rate. So invoke repeating constantly runs until we stop it. And we stop it whenever the game ends, literally, because everything else is just constantly running. So first off, in string, like in quotes, we need to call our remove function, like remove and add stamina function. But once again, we need to put it into quotes. For me, this autocomplete is going to double that, but that's fine. Then we need to define when do we want to start. We're going to say, comma, 0. That's the time we don't want to wait anything. And then we have like a repeat rate, like once a second as an example. We can also put in anything else. We can like put a 3, a 4, a 5, a 10, a 100. Doesn't really matter. So invoke repeating now keeps on repeating, calling, remove and add stamina, but we have a problem over here. We have the problem that we need to put in a value like a 1. We want to get back a point. Yeah, that's a good question, Baxter, and I'm gonna trigger that, or we're gonna check this out right now. So as you can see, we have an argument of 1, and we cannot pass in the correct number right now because we are calling just a string parameter. And a little workaround for that is going to be we create another function which is calling that function, and we invoke repeat the next one literally. So let's take a look. Invoke. I just name it invoke stamina. So literally we call a function from a function in which we can put in any argument. In this particular case, we want to remove and add stamina. We can now pass in the parameter, like we can pass in a 1 or a 10, 100. And now we invoke this little method over here. So I copy this and put this over here as being the string parameter, like so. So this is the workaround in which we can still keep on invoking something. This doesn't do anything but call this function, and we can put in any type or any amount of arguments. We can also pre-calculate arguments if we want to, based on whatever this particular amount is going to be. Like, for example, we can multiply that by a upgraded amount, let's say. Like we have created an upgrade function in which we get more stamina over time, like we get 2 instead of 1, then we can just multiply it by whatever the level is of this amount. Same for damage. So whenever we do a flow damage and you want to subtract it, as you explained, from health every now and then of course you're going to do the same way, literally. If you don't like this invoke repeating method, which is going to be the simplest one over here to remove 1 or perform everything now and then, like every once a second, you can also make use of a coroutine. A coroutine is basically nothing else than a time-based action in which we can literally just let a while loop run, like while this or that is true or false, or when a while, whatever the while is, while true, we can just keep on continuously after a given amount of time. We just say yield return something, like yield return you wait for seconds 1, then every once a second we perform everything which comes afterwards, and then we go on and continue with that. Okay, let's since we call start at the very beginning, we'll also create this invoke repeating method, which is going to constantly do the rest of our of our stamina get. And of course we need to check out if it doesn't overdo it, and as well as we don't have any other issues. So console says everything is fine. We're gonna go and dig some things here and then. As you can see, every now and then, every once a second, I get back 1 stamina point, every once a second. If that is too fast for you, and depending of course on the game or the needed stuff for that, we can reduce it, and invoke repeating is going to repeatedly increase stamina back to something. For my game, I guess once a second is too much. Maybe I'm gonna, or too small amount, maybe I'm gonna make it every 2 seconds or every 3 seconds. So we really need to take care of, where do we make use of our constant things over here. And by the way, we can make use of invoke repeating for multiple things. Like we can, when we have hired somebody, I can reduce it over here so we can see every 3 seconds stamina increases. Like we have hired somebody who's going to dig automatically for us. He doesn't use our stamina because it's the player stamina, but he can constantly reduce sand from the center or whatever. Just make use of the upper stuff over there. Then he can also go and check. That's why I explained in the very beginning that we don't need to show something to get it to work, literally. So now we just have one little routine, like one invoke repeating, which is constantly doing whatever we say it has to do, and we can just put in any arguments at any time we want. I hope that explains everything. If you want to know more about coroutines, then just ask, and I write one pretty quick. So as you can see, we don't have any money. So we cannot actually get any upgrades or anything else like increasing the shovel amount or increasing or decreasing stamina usage or get rid of stamina usage or whatever the amount the upgrades are going to be. But also we don't have any fish and we don't have anything to mine over here. So let's take a look into mining. What we want to do is we have a current stone and current fish amount. Mining and fishing is literally the same, except we want to extend it to something. And also we don't have anything which is showing us how much stones we do have and what we want to do with them. And so what we can later on do is create a list of different stones, let's say, which we are going to get, like whenever we increase the level of stones, that we only get higher level stones whenever we have actually purchased the upgrade for a specific stone type. In that case, for the fishes itself, the same. We can, for example, later on eat fish to get stamina back. Depending on whatever the fish is going to be, we can increase the stamina not just by 1 when eating a fish, but maybe by 5 or 10 or 100. So depending on how much stamina we actually do have. For that, of course, we need to create some extra user interface, some buttons to actually eat the fish whenever we have enough of the fish, as well as we are able maybe to sell the fish for gold. And same for the stone. The stones are only sellable, but we cannot eat them, as an example. So to do so, we just need to have multiple new things later on. Like, as you can see, I keep everything as simple as I can. We once again go into a user interface design, or the user interface for fish and for a stone a bit later on. So what we need is, of course, the possibility to earn fish, like by just clicking our button. And we literally do the same as we did with removing sand. We just make a public function. We access our stone. We increase stone by whatever the amount is. Maybe we later on randomize the amounts. Maybe we get 1 or 2 or 5 at a time, and then we later on have the possibility to sell them. We don't know how much worth is one specific stone. We can define this later on as well. Like whenever we go into this a bit deeper, like different types of stones as an example, then of course we're gonna be able to manage these numbers like in a specific list. In which we just create little classes which are holding all the information about the stone, all the information about different fishes, like images and all the other good stuff. Well, as you can see, we haven't done much, but we have like half a game done, kind of. So what we now need to do is, of course, we need to implement the function. So we first off want to have a public function so we can access the actual stone amount. Whenever we click on it, of course, we're gonna say we want to add stone. We don't want to remove stone at this particular point. We only want to do remove stone whenever we later on sell it. And since on selling we may or may not have to do some different things, we maybe split it up. We can actually change that, of course, later on. But as you can see, we're gonna go pretty quick through that. So what we say is, whenever we click on the stone, currently we just do something like int amount, and of course we say plus equal amount, whatever the amount is going to be. Later on, again, we're gonna maybe randomize that amount by something between 1 and 3, or whatever we like in place. And also we can later on show some UI in which shows us on screens like a floating number that we get +1, +3, plus whatever. But that is once again something we may or may not take a look into later on. So in here we just add our stone amount, and since we currently don't have anything which is keeping track on the amount, like we don't have anything which actually takes care of that. We know that. But what we also want to do is we want to actually remove and add stamina in this particular case, because, well, we are using the button, and so we want to also reduce stamina at this point. I'm gonna copy this because we want to do the same for the fish. So we want to add a fish to it. In this case, we of course say fish plus equal amount, and we want to remove and add stamina to this point as well. So, and that's basically everything we need to do. We just now need to hook up the buttons for our fishing and for our mining over here into our on-click events. Pretty simple. We just once again drag in the game manager. We now know we are on the fish, so we want to add a fish. We add one fish just for the moment, as well as we do the same for the pickaxe over here. We just drag in the game manager to this game manager, add stone. Don't forget to save your scene again, and we are good to go for this one. Okay, so whenever we now press play, of course we cannot see the values, but I show you how you can still make them visible. And when I now click on the fish, we should get fish, as well as we use stamina. Same for digging onto stones. We're gonna reduce stamina as well, updates everything, because we just have one action, one simple function which is going to take care of that. We increase stamina over time, but we haven't reduced sand at the moment, so we can even go and do this. Pretty good so far. And the next one is we wanna anyhow get money into play. So meaning we anyhow wanna maybe sell the fish. Before we do that, I want to show you how you can visualize even private values. I'm gonna go into pause. I get rid of maximize and play because it's easier to see. We hit, or I select the game manager in which we actually should see all those messages. We're gonna take a look into the headers in a second as well. And what we can go is here onto the three dots. There's a debug mode. When we click on that, we're gonna see grayed out values over here. What you can see is currently we have 0 coins, we have this amount of sand, stamina, and so on, as well as fish, stone, and clicks. When I now unpause and I click on fish, we're gonna get one fish. As you can see, it's on the gray field over here. Same for digging, we're gonna reduce sand by 1 over there, as well as when we dig on the stone, we don't get any stones. Interesting. Because, well, our button itself is not set it up correctly. We need to, of course, put into the on-click event of the button. I go back onto normal mode. So we see it. You can see over here I have just a 0 inside. Yes, you're good, Baxter. Pretty good. So now we can also add, add some stones to it. Once again, we can go to debug mode over here. We see, okay, nothing is over there. We now should be able to add a stone whenever we click on the pickaxe. As you can see, now we have a 6. And I can keep on clicking over there and we add to it. Pretty good. So, and once again, if you do any changes, don't forget to hit Ctrl S for quick save, or probably on Mac it's going to be Command S. I'm not quite sure about that, but check it out just for quick saving whenever you do any changes. Okay, fine. Now we have like 3 things, which are well, actually even more things. We have like the UI over there. Now what we don't have again is money. So how do we actually sell fish? We can do something like later on, we can put in a variable or something like an automated shop, which is automatically going to sell fish for us. For example, if we have fish, then it automatically sells it. Once again, we can do this over using an invoke repeating. Beforehand, we maybe need to purchase something for a specific amount of gold or coins or whatever the values are going to be. Meaning, for maybe, let's say we need to earn 5,000 coins before we have like an automatic seller or auto vendor who is going to actually automate selling the fishes we got beforehand. As an example, we can also make use of again the invoke repeating method, so we can instantly start it. But if there is no vendor, we just return. But if the vendor has been purchased or whatever, or updated to something, then we can sell this and that amount of fish. Let's put this together. Since we want to get some coins and we want to see if our coins are going to be created. So first off, we need to have a function which is going to do this for us and sell this for us. We can just put in any numbers literally, and we can just say, okay, every once a second, we want to sell 1 fish. Once again, later on, we're going to implement this into a user interface in which we have to press a button to sell a fish. But an auto vendor is literally nothing else. We just create a void to access it, to put in any values if necessary, or we just say something like auto sell fish. So we don't put anything inside, we just create a function for that. And what we now say is, okay, if we have more than 1, or actually more than 0 fish, so if fish is bigger than 0, If that is the case, we want to do the cell, otherwise we don't. Then we just go out of that, or we don't perform anything which is inside the if statement. So we can say something like fish minus equal 1, and coins, I just hard coded for the moment, coins plus equal 10. Just so we get an idea of what is going to happen. And then of course we need to update the coins. So we say update coins UI. Open close parentheses, close the line with a semicolon. If we have later on fish UI in any case, well, that depends once again up to you completely. You can also update the fish UI for that as well. And what we now need to do is we need to invoke this auto selling the fish. So pretty simple, we just say invoke repeating. Now we say auto sell fish. Make sure you 100% type that, or just copy paste the values, comma 0, comma, let's say 1 for debugging purposes. So we can say now, okay, auto sell this one every once a second if we have one, at least one. Otherwise, of course, we cannot sell something we don't have, right? So when I now press play, the invoke should start. We shouldn't get any issues of values or errors or something. And I now get some fish. What you can see is on the left side over here, this little number increases now until I have no fish anymore. So the variable, or this function, keeps on invoking and repeating, so we get actually some coins which we can make use of for for selling our fish, the fish we just got beforehand. I guess I got something around 20 fish, or 22 as you can see. So all of the fish have been sold now. When I press again, I need 10 more. Then of course the auto seller is going to do this for us. Pretty simple. So you just need to understand, or just take the methods given from Unity or from Mono behavior literally, and just make use of them. So, and this is just simple mathematics. Just take a look. Do we have something? If we do so, just reduce it by 1, increase whatever we want to increase, and update the user interface to whatever is necessary. Okay, so now we know how to auto sell fish. We maybe want to unlock this one later on by a button or by any upgrade, whatever it is. And you now, I believe so, you get the idea how that could work as well. Now let's take a look into whatever. Basically the same is happening for stones later on as well. Now let's take a look into how we can define multiple different stones as an example to get, like when we have like an upgraded version of something. Of course we cannot upgrade it because we don't have anything set it up so that a specific value can get upgraded. So maybe we're gonna get this first. What I want to do is, whenever I create a fish, I want to have something to sell the fish by a button as an example. I want to see if a fish is actually available. So what we can do is we can take this little backpack symbol over here. I'm going to make use of that, which is going to represent maybe my backpack, my inventory, whatever you call it. And inventories usually are not so hard to perform or to just show. It's more the user interface which is going to be the actual problem of all. An inventory literally is nothing else than having a space holder or placeholder, a list of something in which we can just increase or decrease the amount of whatever we have. And if the amount is 0, then we don't show that something is going to be inside the backpack or inside the inventory. And there are so many easy ways to do this. But before we're gonna do this, we want to have something like let's say a user interface which we can make use of that for that specific thing. To do that, I'm gonna clamp some things together over here because they are basically currently on one specific, let's say, canvas. I don't want to introduce a second canvas. I want to make use of the first canvas over here, and maybe I'm gonna create an image, and this image is going to be my whatever inventory panel. I want to make use of this panel because I don't want to be able to click on other buttons whenever this panel is active. I want to go and deactivate the debug mode and go back to normal so we see what's going on and what the most important things are. I want to make sure that I use uniform stretch on this particular one, like so. So I have it like over the complete play field. Then I want to go and tint the image, let's say black, and reduce its alpha so we can still see through, but we know that something is going on. We cannot click or bypass this one. Do never ever reduce it alpha to 0 because this is not going to hold back the actual raycasts. So whenever we now press or I press play and try to click on this on this button over here or on this button over here, you're gonna see nothing is changing because this complete full image now blocks inputs from this particular image over there. Like for any inputs. So we can only interact what is above this particular inventory panel. What I now want to put in is maybe another image, which is going to be like the actual inventory as an example. We can design it to whatever we want to. We can make use of some sprite. I believe I had something in the very beginning like this one with a border around it. As you can see, it automatically stretches now over the complete size because I was doing this little green dot thing, and it automatically slices itself and keeps everything in place. Now for the inventory itself, so once again this is just an image, it's just like a placeholder, and what we can put in is something like a grid layout group or something like that, which is able to hold the items and show them as whatever they have to be shown. So to do that, we just create another UI image over here. We cannot see that, so I maybe tint this bit grayish or something. And once again, we can do this as I already have shown over here. Like we have like a buy button or a use button or both, and we maybe have something like an amount, if that is even necessary. Maybe we keep or cap it to a specific amount, but I don't think that is necessary as well. Or we have like a one button solution, like for fishing or for fishes, we can use them. And this one is maybe not buy, but actually we want to sell things, right? So this buy button should be, of course, a sell button, like so. And same for stones. Stones are not usable, so they only have just like a sell button. Maybe we will also show the value of how many coins we are going to get over there. Once again, this is super simple stuff. We can literally just later on fill into whenever we need to. Back to Unity, we can now once again take a look into all these options and things. Like we can make our own designs over here. We can make a grid. We can make all the items we're gonna have like top to bottom, one under another. We can make them small. We can make them big. We can design them into anything we want to, literally. I'm gonna make a, oops, not this one, but this one here around as well. So as you can see, I can simply use the graphic from beforehand and just redesign the actual, let's say, item slot or whatever it is, to be whatever we want it to be. Once again, I believe a small item slot like this one should be more than enough. Like we have like a grid layout group, which is going to be maybe later on also scrollable if you have like multiple things. Maybe we're gonna have something like with tabs on the top, in which we can switch between let's say two different types of inventory panels. One is showing just the stones, the other one just the fishes, something like that. Completely again and totally up to you. So this is going to be my item holder or something, which is once again just a visual representation of the item itself. And on the item holder, we need to have like one or two buttons, like at least one for doing the selling the item. And it's a bit big over here, but we don't need super big buttons at this point. I'm gonna give the text over here a bright black, and I make this one bold again so we can hopefully see that better. I'm gonna make use of this a bit like that. So again, just play around with these. Some may or may not need the button. Maybe just once again, fish have another item holder than a stone. So one is for using an item and one is for selling an item. So maybe we're gonna put a sell button over here. You can tint it, you can do whatever you like and please. And we're gonna have like this one over here, which is for using. So use an item and sell an item. If you want to have like later on also text elements like again the name of the item, then you just put in a text element over here. I'm gonna make it try to fit it into my UI over here. Once again, I do best fit. I'm gonna make it super dark so it's seen easier, maybe also bold. And then we're gonna pass in any name we want to, and also we're gonna have something like the amount text, like this is going to be the name text. Then I just duplicate it, Control D, and drag it down like coins. Well, I just do something like 10 over here, coins, or coins text. And then I duplicate this one once again. It's like how much we do have. Maybe I'm gonna put this right-sided over here. It's like the amount text or something. Yeah, maybe I'll rename this one to be amount text. And this is coins text. And what you can also do is you can also put in any other images, like UI image, and I'm gonna put my coin image onto this so people understand, aha, awesome, this is what I get for my item over here. So maybe I'm gonna put this over there, take this image and bring this over here, and so you know, something like that. So we're gonna know now, okay, this is about that. We have a text over here. By the way, always go and check whenever you create user interface stuff. Make sure that you go and maximize and play and see how it in the end is going to look. So you make your life easier over here. And if you want to put in something like an amount text or something like X10 or whatever, then later on you can fill this data later on automatically to talk to this particular item holder. But to talk to all these things, we're gonna have to set up the complete item holder first. So there are multiple things we need to take care of as well, but for the moment we need to make sure that we have another script which sits onto the item holder, in which we can always put in the correct data based on, let's say, an item ID or something, which is necessary for inventories, as well as the correct amount from, let's say, the stone amount, the fish amount, whatever. Whenever we sell it, of course, we need to update this user interface things as well. So we need to talk to each particular item holder, which we later on have inside a list, loop through, see who contains the specific ID, and then we update everything which is on here. Once again, inventories are a bit more advanced, but literally nothing else than, you know, anything else, of course, like other programming things. For the item holder, we now, as I said before, we need to have a script. So a C# script, I call this item holder. So we can fill in later on data into this particular item holder, in this one or a copy of that or anywhere else based on the items we have to make use of. And I have created another tutorial series about everything based on these item holders, I guess so, by if you take a look into one of my I believe it's called Weapon Shop tutorial series, in which I just explain everything about user interface and all the item holder things I have implemented there as well. But you can take a look into this later on whenever you like and please, or maybe need to have whenever you need to take a look into. What I need to do is I need to take this item holder script and put this onto my base image, or my item holder image over here, and we need to create some connections to all the items. I'm gonna need to close my mono develop over here. I'm gonna save my scene first. We don't fill anything at the moment. We just need to create some holder objects in which we can later on talk to, like we can talk to this text element, this text element, this text element, and also give it some ID so we always know what it is about. I go and double click my item holder again. And hope it's opening today. There we go. I need to click like 2 buttons pretty quick. And of course need to go into my item holder, see if everything has been loaded completely. Yep, pretty good. So I don't need to start an update for these because the item holder only receives data. And in that case, it needs to be once again onto one of these images, and we just fill in data. So which data do we need? First off, all of them need to be public, otherwise we don't have access from outside. So we have a public integer, and I just name it ID. You can also name this one item ID if you want to. That's totally up to you. So the ID later on just represents what is the actual item about. Then we have something like a name tag. It's going to be of type text. But once again, text is not available, so we're gonna implement the namespace using Unity engine.ui as we have done before. And this is going to be like the item name or item name text literally. Probably we're gonna make use of a string, but we need to have the connection to the text anyways. And later on when we fill data into this, then we are good to go. Hi Vitaly, what do you mean? What do you mean by blasters in Star Wars? As a tutorial. You shouldn't, by the way, you shouldn't take projects you cannot handle on your own, or which are too huge for you. So if I see that a project is going to be too huge for me, and then I probably never touch that. So try to be a bit more precise if you have any requests at all. So next one is going to be our coins text. So we have like public text, coins text, and we have like a public text amount text. We have two possibilities to get the data. First off, we can push the data into the item holder and update the complete user interface onto this particular item holders whenever we load them. Or the other hand is going to be like we drag or we grab the data from a, let's say, user interface handler if there is one. Currently we have avoided that, but probably for later usage, it's depending on how big programs or projects are going to become, it's maybe easier and better to pick or drag the data from specific positions, like based on an item ID or something, just to update them. Or once again, the other way around, when we have like an inventory system, then we just take the inventory system and then flush data into the corresponding or into the correct item holders, I would say. Something like that. And of course, whenever there's something like a 0 left, then we try to get rid of the item holder, probably. Not sure, maybe we're gonna keep it. It doesn't actually really matter, I believe so. Good, so what do we need to bring data inside the item holder? We need to have a function, and of course in this case a public function, which is going to be able to get the data from whoever talks to it. So it's of type void. And what we can pass in now is we give it a name, something like get data. And now we can put in all the arguments we need. If we have an int ID, we're gonna have a string for the item name. We have another string for the coins, so it could be also an integer, int coins. And then we have the amount, which probably is also going to be an integer. So we can, as you can see, put in multiple data into the item holder, whichever ID it's going to fill up, doesn't really matter, and bring this into play. But what we need to do is we need to update the actual item holder to be whatever it is. So in that case, we can say the item ID is going to be whatever the ID is. So we pass in the ID and update the item holder with this integer. And what we can also do is we can update the text elements which are sitting on it, because they are just a graphical representation of the actual inventory. We can do something like item name dot text is equal to whatever the item name is we're gonna put in. And currently we have a problem over here since both are the same name. So text or dot text for item name is not correct over here. So we usually do something like underscore, so we know, okay, this is for that and this is for that, if you have something like problems with the naming convention overall. So can happen, doesn't have to happen. So next one is for the coins text. And the coins text on our specific item holder over here, dot text, is going to be equal to our coins we pass in, which is going to be an integer. We now need to convert it back to a string as we had before, and we can put in something like a D for decimal numbers. Usually, since it is an integer and a decimal number already, we don't need to actually make use of that if we don't want to. And we're gonna do the same for the amounts text. So amount text dot text is equal to the incoming amount, and now we just again do convert to string, open close parentheses, put in a decimal if you want to. Literally it's not necessary, since once again that is going to be an integer. So now we can talk to the item holder whenever we, let's say, create or get an item. We want to bring the data into the item holder whenever an item is, let's say, is there. And we don't want to, we could render this one always in the background and update the list whenever we add something that we already have this into the list. At the same time, we have another problem that most of the time maybe the inventory is not accessible or not visible, let's say, because, well, we only see things whenever we activate and deactivate them by using an image, let's say. So we can close and open an inventory panel. We're gonna take a look into this in a sec as well, or maybe in some minutes. So now we fill in the item holder with all this item data and update it accordingly. And we can also can compare. Later on, we just grab the correct item ID if necessary and see which is going to be the item holder. And if there is none, then just create a new one. So something like that. Whenever this is done, we need to go to the item holder itself and, of course, fill in all the text elements. We don't touch the ID. It's not important for us. We just take a look into the text elements we're going to have over there. So we have, like, over here the name. We have the coins text, we just drag them into, and we have an amount text. And that's it. So the last thing we need to do is for the item holder is we need to create a prefab. A prefab is nothing else like a template, which is going to be created later on automatically whenever we are done with our content. So I create a prefab folder over here in which I just basically can let it fall in. There are some things we need to take care of. Is probably we're gonna do this when we are done with all the other content. Is first off, I want to make sure that this image over here gets created correctly, I would say. So we have like multiple items, maybe in one, like in here. Later on we can increase or decrease the amount and possible amount, but what we want to have is a grid layout group. And also there are other layout groups you can create on your own. I have a script somewhere in which you can literally create your own layouts with no problems. I don't cover this in this little series or this little video over here. And what we need to do is on our inventory panel itself, or in this case it's going to be not the panel but the image, we need to have a grid layout group. There will be problems in a second. So before I do this, I guess, I drag my item holder onto the inventory panel and put my image over here. Say grid layout group, because the grid layout group resizes the cells as well as the spacing of our actual items over here. So before I put my item holder inside, I probably wanna create the prefab first. So whenever some stuff is happening, I have stored like every information over here. But this image over here, which is like our grid, I can also rename this to be our grid. We want to make sure that the grid works 100% as it should. And our item holder has a size. And the size, like a width and the height. And so we have like a 115. I maybe copy this as being the width. So I put this like over here. And we have a height of the item holder, which is currently this. Copy. So maybe and hopefully our grid is not doing any fancy things. Now when I put an item holder inside the grid, it was copied like the wrong way. So I'm gonna copy this again to be here. And this one was the other way, let's grab it from here. The height seems to be the y-axis. There we go. So with that out of the way, we have now our actual inventory or our item already inside. When I now duplicate, you can see, like I duplicate the item holder, you can see that the grid layout group does what it has to do. It duplicates and brings, based on the size of the image, brings all the items inside our grid over here, like the actual grid with this layout group. What we now can do is we can put some padding, spacing, and all the other stuff into play, like maybe a padding of, I don't know, depends on the size of yours, maybe top and so on, maybe 15 or maybe 10. And we're going to put some spacing in between the items on X and Z as well, so we have easy access. We can see this. You just need to play around with that on your own. Okay, and that's basically it. So the item holder, we can now, if we want to, we should be able to just get rid of them. And whenever we create a new item holder and it's getting created inside the grid, we should be able to see like everything. When we press play and maximize on play, you should see that everything is in place and 100% correct. If that is not the case, of course, just repair everything which is necessary to get it up and running here. Okay, so can it be done so that a grid becomes only in the y-axis? Well, yes. You just need to create a bigger one, and you can say, like for example, we have this cell size, we have the spacing, and there's somewhere. Oh, it's not not over here. It's not over here anymore, it seems. But yeah, the grid, let's assume we have another grid size, like the cell size is broader, like let's say it's 200, like so. The grid layout group, when I now duplicate it, will automatically fit inside the image, like the grid is this image size, and it will automatically place it below it. Why? Because there's no space left to bring a second one next to it. So it only does it on the y-axis. You can also do this like later on when you work with scrollable things and so on. You have to add another one, which is going to be a scroll rect, which represents the size of all these images, like all these item holders, literally. So this is called a content size fitter. Like when you have like a specific amount of content you want to scroll, and it is, in case of length, it is longer than the actual one, the actual visual representation over here. The scroll rect needs to sit above the grid, of course, and so you can scroll the complete grid. And the grid is going to basically be the scrollable content, but it fills like top to bottom, as we already have over here. But with the content size fitter, it resizes itself to be like longer or shorter later on in the long run. So when you have like 100 different items over here, then you need to make sure that this, of course, gets longer and longer, and the scroll rect is going to just scroll the actual grid over there. Not the items, just a grid which holds like everything inside. And the final step later on, of course, is going to be you're going to make use of the scroll rect, which has the size just of that, like the actual grid, and use that as a mask. So you mask out the content, which usually be like below over there, and you don't want to see this, then you just mask out that by the size of the actual scroll rect, or the scroll, let's say, or the square, which is like sitting above it. But you will get it there. Once again, I have a tutorial about this by creating a weapon shop in which I explain like everything about scrolling the content here as well, using content size fitter, and what is the actual way to do it, the correct way, I would say. Good. Now we have that. We want to have an inventory which we can actually, in which we store all the information. We can do this directly in the game manager to keep things, at least for the moment, simple. We can later on add multiple things to it. Like you can have multiple inventories, like as I said before, different stones, different things, and so on and so forth. We can also go and take or bring items directly whenever we go fish. We can say, okay, go to the inventory and add a fish, whichever fish we want to the inventory, and later on we just render, like we render just how many fish there are inside, like what is the updated text amount, what is the gold amount, and so on and so forth. So let's build that. What is actually necessary so we can automatically fill this little inventory thing over here. I'm gonna make use of the game manager object, but I create a new script just in case, because we want to keep things like, let's say, organized, I guess. So I just name this one inventory. There are like thousands of ways to create inventories. Everybody is doing it different. I'm gonna try to go into it and do it as, let's say, as simple and hopefully most understandable as possible. We take a look into the item holder later on, but I need to once again restart my mono develop, and then we continue. So what is a inventory? Inventory is just a class which holds data. And of course, our inventory has to do a bit more. Like whenever we add something, we need to check if we have that already in our list. And what is a list? A list is something like an array in which we can pass in data. And we can define literally any type of item by using whatever we want to, literally just a class as an example to be an item, and then we can create multiple items which we can literally pass into the inventory. So, and an item can be, like, as I said before, can be anything. What we can do is we can, for example, have something like I just name it so, like a list of possible items, and then we take all the information from these possible items, and then we just pass them into another list, which is like the unlocked, I would say, unlocked, or the actual items we have created. This works once again in one of different ways. The simplest one is just we have, let's say, a dictionary which is going to hold all the information about the items themselves. Then we have maybe something like a scriptable object which is going to hold each item information, and then we just drag in all the scriptable objects possible for our specific inventory. Would be one of the easier ones, I guess, and then we later on just pick the correct information from the scriptable object and put that in. For this little project, I guess I don't want to have that, since it's quite some things to do for this as well, but maybe it's easier for you to understand what a real item is going to be. Let me show you. We declare we can do this inside inventory, so it's always only accessible from inventory itself, a new class, and we can give it a name item. Again, if that is bad, maybe that's not good practice, but in the end we're gonna have later on a list of items we can make use of. If you don't want to do this way, you can create another script, which is just the class item, in which you can fill in data and store that once again in a scriptable object. Probably it's the best way for this. And then we can have like multiple scriptable objects we can create from a menu as a menu, and then we can just pick from it. Again, we can also do this just code wise. We don't need to inherit mono behavior in the item class, since it's not necessary. So from the item holder, we know everything about what is going to be this item for, or what does it have to have. So in that case, we need to have an ID. We need to have a name. Then we need to have what is it worth? What is that particular item worth? And what is the amount we have? The amount to have is only for the inventory, but maybe we have something like a maximum amount if really necessary. For me, it's not, since there is probably no upper, let's say, leftover, whatever. So we need to have an int ID, like the item ID again. Then we need to have an int, let's say, cost. So how much worth is an item. And maybe we also have a string, which is going to be the name of the item. And a name in this particular case probably is not a good one. Oh, and by the way, all of these need to be public here as well. Public and public cost. Oh, no typos. And don't forget to save, of course. So again, you can create a class inside another class. This is possible. If you don't want to have that inside, you can also put this outside of the class, like above or below, wherever you please and like. Currently, it's just related to inventory. To make it visible later on for us, to have like a dictionary or something, or another list of possible items, we need to make sure that we say system.serializable, otherwise we cannot make use of the item class itself or its parameters. Now, since we have like a dictionary in which we want to create like 10 or 5 or whatever the amount is of different items, we need to have a list of that, so we know all the possible items. So a list again is nothing else than an array, but it is dynamic, so we can change it dynamically in size. We need to declare a type, and the type is going to be the item class we already have over there. And then we give it a name. So we say something like possible items, something like that. And we also can say is equal to a new list of item, open close parentheses, and close the line with a semicolon. So we can now create possible items in our inventory and can actually design it. Let's take a look how it looks actually. Once again, using scriptable objects for inventories is way more accessible and performant, I guess, but we wanna continue. So I drag inventory onto my game manager object. Basically, it doesn't really matter where it is, and we have like a size of possible items of 0. And if I say, okay, I have a size of 1, I can put in an ID, a name, and the cost for the item, like whatever we get. So I want to put the string above. So the element is called whatever the string name is going to be called. We'll see that in a sec. I'm going to save over again and go back to Unity. And you see then the element 0 over here might change whenever we pass in a name over here. So we say, okay, it's just a fish. And so you can see the item name like the element 0 over here, which is which is going to be the first element in the list, element 0, is now also named fish. We give it an ID 1, and the coins or the cost is going to be maybe 10. So we get 10 whenever we sell this particular fish, like whenever we click on this button over there. We don't have the button clicks yet, but we'll get there. So another item, if we want to add 2 items, we can do so. We just it just copies the first element. When you go for editor scripting later on, you can create some fancy things with that. But yeah, that's the easiest one over here. Whenever we pick a stone, we maybe get some other amount over there. And of course, we give it another ID. In this case, maybe 2. If we have later on like a fish list, it's okay, you can use that. If you have a stone list, like you have multiple lists, if you want to keep them all organized and like one after another, and they all need to have their own ID in this case. So we have possible items, so whenever later on we're gonna click on the pickaxe, we wanna get the correct ID from our inventory, we're gonna need to prepare like everything for that. So how do we add now an item to our inventory? First, we don't have an inventory yet, we just have a possible items list which knows about all the possible items in the game. And what we now have is, or we need to have, is another list which is going to be also of type item. And this is going to be like a real inventory. The real inventory over here is equal to new list of item, open close parentheses, and close the line with a semicolon. Now what we want to do is we want to do multiple checks and add an item to our inventory whenever we click a button. So for that we need to have another public void function in which we want to add an item. And what we pass in or want to pass in is an ID, because that's the only way at the moment. We can also pass in a name or whatever is inside item, that we compare it and see if that is the ID 1 or 2 in our case, and then we add this particular item and look for it in the possible items list, and then we add it to our inventory, and if it is inside over there, we want to just increase the amount of that. And speaking of amount, we probably want to put something like a current amount or something over here as well. Maybe that's not a good idea, having this one in the item itself, but maybe it does. I'm not quite sure. Maybe we need to have just something else, like something else. I don't know. Anyway, when we want to add an item, we're going to pass in from a button this particular ID, and now we check for the possible items and see which one is it. And to do so, and then of course we want to add it to inventory. So what we can do is we can take inventory, and then we want to add the particular item we want to pass in. And which item is the one we want to find? Let's make it a bit more, let's say, temporary. So first off, we store the item and then maybe add to it if it is not there. So in that case, we want to create something like a new item, maybe, and just name it temp. And we can actually create a new item. We don't have any constructor or anything because, well, it's not really necessary, I would say. So in that item, well, no, that's not even a good one. We want to check, it's better, we want to check what is that possible items, which item is it, and we want to store it in temp, so probably that's better. So if possible items literally contains, let's see how we can do this, contains an item with an ID, open close parentheses. I'm not quite sure how we can do this. No, that doesn't work either. Let's see. Maybe we just loop through. Maybe with a for each or for loop. So for loop, with a for loop we can loop through lists, arrays, dictionaries, and so on and so forth. And we want to go and loop through the possible items list. In this case, we're gonna take we start with index 0, and meanwhile the index I, in this case we are looping through, is smaller than the possible items dot count. So the amount of possible items over here, in this case 2, minus 1, since we only check for a lower one, we increment I. And every time we take a look into, we want to compare the ID. So if possible items in square brackets I, so I is the index we are currently looking at, and we now want to compare the ID of the item. If that is the same as the incoming ID, then we know that we found it. And if we have found it, we want to add it to the inventory. So we can say something like inventory dot add possible items in square brackets I. So we now have the ID with that particular item and pick this and take this from that. But it's not just that. We want to see if the item has been added beforehand. So we just want to increment the amount of this particular item. So in that case, we're going to see, or we need to see if the inventory already contains this item. So in that case, we can do some extra check beforehand, before we add it. Like if the inventory, if that contains already the item we have found. So first off, we need to probably again put this into a temporary one. So we say we take possible items I and put this into temp. And now we can request if our inventory.contains, if that contains the temp item already, then instead of adding this one, missed a parenthesis. If we have this one already in place, then we just want to increase the amount of the current existing one. So once again, if inventory.contains the temporary, the one we just found with the correct ID, if that already contains it, then we want to say in inventory. How do we access the item right now? Let's see. Inventory in square brackets. How do we access that item right now? Because it can happen that it's not the same one. So literally, we would need to loop through the item list again and see which one it is. Or how do we store this one? So which item that is going to be? Maybe we do another, something like a temp2 item. Yeah, good question. How can we actually access this one? Because, well, we know just the ID of that, and we know that it contains it, but how can we access it? If you guys have any anything to help me out, of course, feel free to do so. Or if you have questions, of course, do the same. Maybe we need to just loop through that as well. I don't know. So we just create a for loop with a J letter over here and go and loop through the inventory dot count. Nope, not capacity dot count. And see if we find the item with the same ID over there, and then we change stuff on that. Does it make sense? Probably. Now we may need to compare if the temp item.id matches the actual inventory in square brackets J, like whatever the current index.id is going to be, if they are the same. So we need to say equal the temp ID equals the inventory ID. If that is the case, we gonna have to add to the amount. So we say inventory in square brackets J dot amount plus plus. So we increase the amount, the current amount of the inventory item, whichever is inside, by 1. If that is not the case, so if it doesn't contain it, then we need to add. And of course, at this point, whenever that is the case, we need to return or break, or, well, yeah, I believe so. We're gonna break out of here. If that is not the case, so if that doesn't trigger, or in this case, we probably never end into it, but if that is not the case, we're gonna have to say, we wanna say inventory.add the actual temporary item, I guess. So we say add temp, because we haven't added this one beforehand. So again, first we loop through the possible items and check for their ID. If we find the ID in the possible items, which should be possible, we store it in a temporary variable by the current ID and just store it there. Then we check if the inventory contains this ID. If that is the case, then we're gonna loop through the inventory and see which one it is, because we could click one or the other, so the IDs are not going to be the same. Then we're gonna compare the ID from the temporary item. We could, by the way, also take the normal ID over here, doesn't really matter. We compare the temp ID with the inventory ID and see if they match. If that is the case, we increase the amount of the inventory already existing item over there. And then we break out of the for loops, well, hopefully, otherwise we're gonna go and add the inventory item over here, and then we should literally break out of here as well, because we want to break this for loop at this point, because there's no reason to stay over there. And now we need to have an accessor to our inventory, and we do the same as we did with the game manager. So we say something like public static inventory, and then we're gonna say, of course, instance, as we did before, and we create now the awake function. So we say void awake with a big A in the beginning, open close parentheses, instance is equal to this. So we can anytime talk to the inventory system. So whenever we are now in Game Manager and we click on add stone, we want to add an item with a specific ID. In this case, it's going to be the ID 1, and of course with all the other information. So yeah, that's it. What we do is we also want to, or maybe we don't need to have the stone amount anymore over here, but we later on need to compare this remove and add a stamina later on by, we need to control it maybe a bit different later on. So what we want to do for now is we want to talk to our inventory, and its instance, and in here we want to add an item, and we're going to give it just the ID. I believe it's 1. If it's not, then well, we're gonna no, it's ID 2. I'm gonna let the compiler run just for a second and see if there are any mistakes or issues. Not yet. Pretty good. So this is going to be ID 2. And later on, if we have like a fish, whenever we add a fish over here, we're gonna add the item ID 1. Once again, if you later on have something like upgradable items and so on, you just take whatever the ID is from the actual index of the list, or whatever you think which is going to, or you randomize it, or whatever. But for the moment, it's not really necessary, I would say. Now let's take a look into the inventory itself, so we can see this inventory has no item, and I'm gonna disable the inventory panel because currently we don't need it, and we have no access to it anyways. So I go here and I'm gonna pause it and go out of maximize on play, and now I click on the fish. I clicked once, and now I go to the game manager and see, oh, okay, I have now a fish over here. We need to change the amount in a second as well. So when I now click again on the fish, it adds to the amount, but it also adds a new fish into the inventory, which is bad. We want to avoid that, or we wanted to avoid that, so it's not going to wherever it is. So what we need to do is over here we need to say temp dot amount is equal to 1. Probably it is correct, I'm not quite sure. Or we need to say temp plus equal amount, not quite sure. Maybe breaking out is not really the right one. Maybe we can just return at this point, since, well, we don't want to get into the other way over there. Not quite sure, we'll see. So whenever we have found it and we added a new one, we don't want to add it again. So let's see if that works. So I click on fish, I get 1. Amount is 0, again it's wrong, but we'll take that. And now when I click continuously onto this, you can see now the amount gets added to our fish slot over there. Pretty good. So now our inventory knows how much we do have. So whenever we later on eat one, we also want to reduce the amount. And when there's literally 0, we want to get rid of the item as well. So whenever we remove it, literally. But we'll get there. So next one is we first off add this item to be into the inventory. We want to add a temp to it. So in that case, before we add it, again, or whenever we do add it, we may or may not need to say amount plus 1, probably. Maybe in that case, we only want to do this whenever we do not reach this part. So we say temp, like in the bottom over here. So temp dot amount plus plus. So we increase it by 1. Let's see if that works. And then we add it. Otherwise, we never add anymore a new one, because the amount is going to be added once we find it actually inside the list. So we press a fish. Now we have an amount of 1. And now we add even more to that whenever we click on this fishing item. Same for the stone. Whenever I click stone, or I try to get one, then of course the amount is going to be added to be 1. And now we can continuously click on these amounts over there and onto the fish as well. So as you can see, it now talks to the correct items based on the ID we want to actually know, or we want to talk to in this particular case. So again, as being sum up over there, we add the ID as an item to our inventory, and here we just check, do we have an item already of this particular one? If not, then just add it, and of course add a temporary amount to this, and then we'll break out of here. Probably also can return instead of break. And the next one is going to be, if we do have it already inside over there, then we just store that particular item over here, and then we update it. Like we check, does it really contain it? Then check out the inventory, see if the item is already here. If that is the case, we just increase the amount of the inventory item, whichever we have in our list, in our inventory list. If you have any questions, once again, just let me know, and I try to discover that. Good, now we have the possibility to add items. Now we want to sell items. So we actually want to reduce an item. We want to get the cost, or whatever it costs, into our game manager's coin. So whenever we sell it, we want to talk to the correct ID inside the inventory based on the button we press. But before we can do even that, we need to connect the item holder as well as all the graphics based on how much items we do have, and need to fill the item like our inventory slots, basically, whatever they are, and need to render them out as well. So we need to fill the actual item list based on if it is there already or not. And of course, we need to have a possibility to loop through all these items, check for the correct IDs to actually get the visual representation of the correct amount, the coins to get, as well as the sell buttons. Like the buttons need to take the ID in consideration, and taking the ID, talking back to the inventory itself, and then update it accordingly. And so we need to, let's say, repaint or retint the inventory list over here as well. So literally we need to redraw the complete list, because, well, when we don't do this, we have a problem, or might have the problem, that whenever we delete a specific item holder with a specific ID, maybe it doesn't get drawn correctly. We'll see. Okay, so what do we need is we need to fill the complete list with possible items, or from this possible items inside our space over here. But we need to have two connections in which we want to place these. First, we need to know the transform of the grid, because we need to make a child onto this particular grid. So we say public transform grid. It needs to be public because we need to drag it inside, of course. Also, we need to have the prefab of our item holder, which we can pass or populate our grid with. So we say public game object item holder. That's good. Now we can literally say, okay, we want to place, depending on the amount of items we have, we want to create this amount of item holders and fill the correct information to them. So we just loop through it and create a new one when there is none left. Or basically, we just paint whatever we have inside the inventory. I created a new function for this because we probably have to reorder this or have to redo all of that. So let's say we name this fill a list or fill a visual list, or fill, oh, well, I don't know, oh, just draw inventory. Maybe draw inventory is a better name. Draw inventory. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to loop through our inventory. For each or for loop doesn't really matter. So for each item in our inventory item dot count, we increment I. So I, once again, is just an indicator, an index, nothing else. You can name this whatever you please and like. So for each item inside our inventory, we want to create this particular item holder and fill in the corresponding data. So if the item is literally empty, of course, we don't need to draw anything. So we don't need to create the inventory holder for this particular piece. So once again, what do we need to do is we need to instantiate, at the very first place, we need to instantiate the item holder object. So we say instantiate item holder. So again, this item holder is going to be the one with a small I over here. It's not the one with the big I. The big I, we're gonna take a look into this in a sec. So once we have instantiated that, we need to grab info from the created item holder. But to do so, we need to catch the game object first. New item, new I, new whatever, new holder, just holder. But we don't need to have the keyword new, we just need to have holder is equal to instantiate item holder. What we now can do is we can now take any component from holder because we now have catched it. And now we can say we create a new instance of item holder if we want to and need to catch that as well. So we name this maybe I holder is equal to, you can also name it whatever you please and like, is equal to holder dot get component, open close these triangle brackets, of type. This type is going to be the item holder type, and open close parentheses. So we store this in I holder now. So again, we now have created or instantiated a new instance of our prefab. Now we take the script from it, like the item holder which is connected to it. Now we can update everything which is inside the I holder. So I holder dot ID, or in this case item ID, is equal to, and now it's getting interesting. Which item ID do we have now is going to be whatever the item is inside the inventory's slot, literally. So we're gonna take index I dot ID. So the ID of the actual item we're gonna have to pass into the item holder ID, so later on we know which one is which. Same for the other ones, like the string parameter for the name. So I holder dot name, or probably it's item name. Let's take a look into this. Oh, we do have this function. That's even better. So we don't need to do this like everything now and then, or every now and then. We just can say I holder dot get data, and in get data we can also pass in the ID and stuff. So inventory in square brackets, what is it? I dot ID is the first argument. The next argument is going to be the item name. So we can say inventory, and probably we could even simplify that even further by catching the current loop through inventory item. Inventory in square brackets I dot what is it? Name? Is it named name? It is named name. So dot name. Probably name is not a good one at this particular point. Maybe I rename this to be item name, just in case. Because name is something which is probably not directly accessible. Or copy. Or basically it's getting overwritten by the other naming convention things. So next one is going to be, what are we looking for? For the coins. So coins in this case is going to be the actual cost over here. So we say inventory in square brackets I.coins or cost. And the last one is going to be what is the current amount inside the inventory. So inventory in square brackets I dot amount. So whatever the amount is, we're gonna see. And now we fill in the data inside the item holder. And the item holder, of course, updates its text as well as all the other content. Now, since we are inside this, we currently draw that, and what we need to do is, whenever we have updated this one, we need to pass in now the holder object into the grids as a being a parent. So we can say holder dot, I believe it's set parent or just parent or transform dot parent is going to be equal to whatever our grid is. This is an important step, otherwise it's anywhere but not where it has to be. I try to figure this out and see if that is working correctly. What we need to do is we need to redraw later on all the items or the item lists from our inventory. So we need to store the holder into another list of items as well. And every time we do a change or we add a new one, we need to redraw it. Because probably it's not necessary to put in like every time a new item into the item slot, because that's currently happening. Whenever we draw the item or the inventory, we just wanna, you know, we wanna make sure that everything is correct and based on this inventory. And every time we call it, we create new holder objects. So instead of doing that, we wanna have maybe another private list, so nobody knows about it. It's just a hidden one. It's our the type is going to be a game object. It's going to be just a holder list or something in which our item holders are going to be. So later on we can just loop through them and update them, or just delete it and just redraw it completely. So holder list is equal to a new list of type game object, open close parentheses, close the line with a semicolon. And before we do that, or after we are done with all of these things, oh, my microphone is not... Oh, no, it should work again. I'm sorry for that. Okay, cool. So whenever we are done with instantiating our object, we want to also add the holder object inside the holder list. So we say just holder list.add the holder object, like so. And before we draw the inventory, we want to delete all the objects or the drawn objects into or from the holder list. So in that case, we can say something like we loop through through the complete list. So we can literally create another for loop over here. In this case, the letter I can stay as is, but we loop through the holder list dot count. And what we want to do is we want to destroy each object we find inside. So we say destroy holder list in square brackets I. And after we are done with completely destroying this list, we want to say holder list dot clear. So we clear it off so it has the size of 0 again. So first off, we delete everything we find inside, then we clear the list, and then we fill the inventory. And now whenever we add an item, we want to literally go into and redraw the inventory. So, and also later on when we delete something from the inventory, we also want to make sure that we update that or draw the inventory again. So in that case, after adding it, like after here, we want to say we want to draw the inventory at the very end. Whenever everything has been done, we know everything is inside, and we should be able to see a completely correct setup, inventory. Let's test it out. I'm gonna reactivate my inventory panel. So this is going to be the image we want to show later on from the button, like hiding and unhiding just that inventory panel. But before we do that, we want to update everything about our inventory over here. So we have our possible items we can get. We now need to have the grid connected in which our item is going to sit. I just take this one over here, and we need to have the prefab, which we are going to take from our prefab folder and put this over here. So this is the item we are going to create whenever we draw a new item over there. What now is going to happen? Let's take a look into the item holder here itself. Currently you see it's just one item holder over there, pretty good. But when I now go and hit the fish, you can see a new item holder clone is being created over here. Parent of rect transform is being set with parent property, so probably we're gonna make use of set parent, which is good. Thanks for letting me know. So as you can see, Unity does know what's going to happen over there. So instead of using parent over here, we're gonna have to say dot set parent, and then we need to pass in the parameter as being the grid as a transform type, and then we should hopefully get this up and running. And hopefully it does automatically recreate, and I put it also into the correct position. So currently my one is here, so when I click now, we're gonna get another one. It's kind of strangely parented. As you can see, the position is very strange, but it does parent this one completely to the grid over there. So now to test it out a bit better, I'm gonna make the inventory panel a bit smaller so I have access to this button over there. Of course the grid is going to be now a bit off, but that's fine. And I enable this inventory panel over here and press play again. So I have now access to the fish button. And we can see this is our current one, and when I now click on the fish, you're gonna see it's strangely spaced and resized. And to avoid that, we need to set the actual instantiate method to be based on world space. I'm not quite sure, by the way, if we can say we want to add it here to the grid, and then we have there an instantiate world space, and we should be able to put a false inside over here, so the grid space itself. In that case, we don't need to reparent the grid at this point. I just get rid of that line, and let's try out again. The false and the true means when it is based on world space, it doesn't take care of the grid itself, like the actual scale of the grid. But in that case, it should now scale correctly. As you can see now, our item doesn't have a name, which is funny, but you can see the cost as well as the amount is getting passed in completely correct, which is good. Now we want to test out some other things here as well. So first off, I want to know if when I now bring this back where it is and I deactivate the inventory panel like so, and I click onto the other button as an example, I want to make sure that the position of that is going to be correct. Now I re-enable this one, so meanwhile in runtime, and you can now see that the item with 15 bucks worth is going to be shown here completely correct, because there's another item inside over there is already literally, and whenever we activate this inventory panel, the grid should automatically reassemble or reorder the items which are inside, so no matter if the inventory is now on or not. Okay, pretty good. So now I would get rid of this item holder, and there's one issue with the name in inside our item name text over here. So the item name from this one doesn't seem to get passed over correctly. So get data at the second point is going to be the string item name, and we should take the item name from this particular item. Oh, because they are empty, I guess, because we have changed them. So in Game Manager, in possible items, these are now empty again because, well, I renamed it to be an item name. And once again, if we have like different other items later on and randomize them or whatever, then we can pick literally anything we want to. And now when I get some fish and open my inventory, I just enable this one. You can see we have fish. The amount is wrong. Why is that wrong? Let's see. We're gonna go and clear the list. We're gonna pass in the inventory dot amount over here. We add the holder to the list. And anytime we add an item, we wanna draw. We're gonna update literally the item holder. We should bring the correct amount inside. Why is it only giving us a 1 in case of the current amount from the inventory? That's a good question. So the amount is going to be the last one over here, and I should update the text correctly. Okay, for testing again, I'm gonna re-enable this inventory and bring this, or just make it a bit smaller here, and click on the fish and see what's going on. So first we redraw the first one. Whenever I click again, it doesn't update the item holder itself, and the amount text also only shows 1. Why is that so? Good question. Oh, that's another interesting thing. But anyhow, the amount in the inventory itself doesn't seem to trigger, or doesn't seem to get over here correctly. Let's see, I try again. Okay, so we have this. And the item holder should actually repaint the amount text based on the incoming amount, which currently doesn't happen. Why is that so? The item holder has the information about it. And it should update the text to be whatever the text is to string. But why doesn't change this? Interesting. Maybe we need to store this information inside item holder. Not quite sure. Just being a private int, let's say current amount or something like so, and then I maybe do something like current amount is equal to amount, and then we render current amount here as being the one to be rendered. So something like that. Not quite sure if that works, but we'll see. Maybe the item holder doesn't get the correct information, why ever, because all the other information is literally correct. And so we can also debug the current amount whenever we go to debug mode and see if the current amount changes on the item holder we get over here. So we now have a current amount of 1. And whenever I click onto this, you can see that the current amount is not passed over correctly over here. So something is going to happen after we are adding this thing like this. Oh, we return at this point. That's why. So I need to make sure that I, of course, draw the inventory at the point where before we return out of adding this content over there. So we cannot just do it over here because we only need to do we only do this once at this particular point. So we only draw it literally. I'm gonna copy this and maybe bring this here as well. We only draw it literally once whenever or before we do return because we only add the amount to this here as well, and we never ever be at the very bottom at this point. So we cannot just do it after the complete for loop because we just break out of the for loop once we are done with everything at this point. Don't forget to save, and let's take a look into this once again. So probably that should work right now correctly, and we don't even need to bring this into being a current value. And now you can see it got redrawn because, well, and updated correctly, because when I select this right now and I click on the fish, my selection will be gone because it gets deleted in a split second and just redraw, or like recreated the complete full list once again. So I can do this like pretty quick over here, and we're going to be able to see that this is working. Maybe it's not a bad idea to have the current amount over there, because whenever we now want to click on eating an item or selling an item, we can decrease the current amount directly on the item holder, which is one good thing. But also we need to update the inventory because that is more the one who has to redraw like the complete items and stuff like that. So like the item list overall. To do that, first off, we want to make sure that we do not add it, but we remove an item. So public. And like there are two possibilities. We can sell an item and we can use an item, like using in case of eating it and getting stamina back whenever it is possible to get stamina from it. So like using it in this case. So let's say we want to sell an item. First off, we want to know what is the ID we want to sell, or which item we want to sell. And then we want to literally go into the inventory itself, look for the ID, and perform the selling. So in that case, for int I, we're going to use I once again as an indicator. We loop through the inventory dot count as we did before and see if our item is there. So if the ID is equal to our inventory in square brackets I, so dot ID. So if we have found that, then we want to remove it. So in that case, we want to say literally inventory in square brackets I dot remove, or in this case amount, minus minus. And what we now want to do is we want to redraw the inventory. So we say draw inventory, and we should be able to get something. But what we also want to do is, based on the current ID, we want to get some coins, like because we are selling something. So in that case, we want to say game manager dot instance dot something to get coins. We don't have anything like add coins, so we can add it to the game manager. So we say public void add coins, and we want to get an int amount here as well. And in that case, we're gonna say coins plus equal whatever the amount is. And we can also once again do the opposite later on. We can also put in negative numbers, but in that case currently it's fine to have it like that. Don't forget to save. And now we want to say add coins over here, and what do we pass in as coins is going to be whatever the inventory item is going to give us. In that case, inventory in square brackets I dot cost. So whatever we get for that, we can also name that or rename cost to be coins, whatever. Good. From the item holder itself, we just need to have the function to sell the actual item. So we say public void sell item. And once again, we're going to put this onto a button which also sits directly on our item holder. In that case, we just talk to inventory dot instance dot sell item. We need to pass in the ID which we already have over there. It's going to be the item ID we have stored inside our inventory or in our item holder over there. I know it's a bit back and forth, but that's the simplest way I can actually think of. Now once again, we click on the button, we sell the item, we pass in just the ID. It loops through, sees if there is an ID, and if it is so, then of course we remove it and then we redraw it and we get our coins back. And of course, well, whenever we don't have anything left, after that, it redraws it, and when the inventory doesn't contain this particular item anymore, then of course we are able to not sell it anymore because the item holder gets deleted and we are unable to do this. Let's prepare our item holder for this. So on our item holder, we do have like the sell button and the other button. I'm gonna take my item holder and bring this onto the grid because we need to change some things here and there. So the first button is going to be our sell button. I'm gonna just rename it to be sell button. And this sell button now gets an on-click event. I go back to normal mode. On-click event. Now I drag the item holder as being the object we want to refer to. On here we have the item holder script, and on here we have the sell item function. There's nothing else we need to pass in because we know everything, or the item holder doesn't know everything. Now select the item holder itself, go to overrides and say apply all. So all the changes are now applied also to our prefab over there. Same for the usage of eatable items. So if we can use it, which we may or may not have as a boolean or something later on, we should be able to do that. Let's test it out. We press play and we try to get a fish. And now we do have fish, we have 11 fish, and now we want to sell one. Okay, I pressed onto it, the amount got reduced. I can try to sell again. But what you can see is I believe we have the money already, but we don't redraw or haven't redrawn the actual coins user interface. So we say update coin UI after we are adding the amount, because it doesn't make sense to not update it, right? Pretty good. Now we just press play once again. Click on this, get some fish, got 12 or 13, I sell one, it gets reduced and we get coins into our coin system over there. Pretty nice. So we have that out of the way as well, so we can literally now add and delete coin or any items when our inventory is not visible, like so. And we click on this, of course we still get fish, and also the item holder gets created invisible. And when we now enable this one, it gets drawn. We have 11 fish, that's nice. Now we can go and sell them, like by of course using the game view. I sell them all, and when the last one is sold, I should redraw this one by having nothing left. Oh, that's interesting. Usually that should not be possible to have this one not anymore on the list. So what we need to do is we need to remove the item from the list whenever the amount is 0, like inside the inventory. So once again, whenever the actual item has been 0 or is 0, then we delete this one from the item or from the inventory as an item slot literally. So how do we do this? Of course, we're going to check the amount. So if inventory in square brackets I, because we are currently looping through that anyways, meanwhile we are already selling in that particular item, dot amount is smaller equals 0 or equals 0. Literally it doesn't really matter, equal or smaller equals 0. we want to say inventory in square brackets I, or in this particular case dot remove. What do we want to remove is, well, literally that particular item we currently have in here. Now is the question, how do we know which item that is? I guess we're gonna store that here again in a temporary item. So we say int temp is equal to inventory in square brackets I, because we found it already. We did the same by adding it, and in that case we can just say we will remove temp, and then we redraw the inventory. Everything should be fine. Maybe we're gonna do this after we already have updated the game manager's coins, so just doing the cleanup afterwards, like when there is no amount left, we should be able to just remove it from the list, and we just store that to be able to get rid of it. Maybe it's not 100% correct and nice, but because we are currently in an item which we are rolling through already, and maybe, well, no, I believe that's the only way at the moment. We'll see. If not, we need to do it like backwards. So I disable now my inventory panel. I add some fish. My item holder gets created. I'm gonna re-enable my panel so I see it. Now I try to sell things like my fish, get my coins, and the item is removed from the grid because there are none left. I go and close my inventory panel and try to add some more, maybe some of stones, some of fish. Re-enable inventory panel, sell these, and now fish gets updated to be thrown to the left, and sell or sold stone first, and then I sold all my fish, and I got like all the coins which I get from the amount of things I have or I actually got from beforehand. Pretty nice. So next one is we want to open and close the inventory panel itself. There are hundreds of possibilities to do that. We can do this directly in Game Manager. We can do this like directly in the inventory of the actual Game Manager. So which script we are going to use doesn't really matter. What we need is a object or a panel to access, or our panel to be accessed. So public game object inventory panel. No, not this way, like that, so we can have access to it. So whenever it is active, we want to deactivate it, and vice versa. So in that case, we can do something like an opposite change if necessary, or we just pass in a parameter like open or close or false or true, whatever. So like we have a public void show inventory, and we pass in a bool. A boolean is nothing else than true or false, giving us or returns just true or false. And I name this one bool open or whatever, or show. And what we can say is our inventory panel dot set active. And now how do we activate it? Whatever open is. So if open is true, then we show it, otherwise we don't show it, and that's fine. We can do this now from all the buttons we have. There's one button we actually need to close it, I guess, which is sitting directly on the panel. So we have a possibility to interact with that and close it at any time. We can also automate things probably anyhow, but let me just create a button. And this button text is going to be maybe just an X. So actually just for closing it, maybe make it bold, maybe make it best fit again onto this. Maybe gonna make it anywhere here or wherever we think that is going to be good or positioned nicely, whatever. Totally up to you again in case of that. And this button just needs an on-click event, and this on-click event is connected to our not inventory panel. This button is going to be connected to our game manager, And then here we have inventory, and there we have show inventory bool. And in here we just let it deactivated, this little checkbox, meaning it is false. And then we have this other button in our button bar, which is going to be this one, which is going to be doing the opposite. So we say on click event, we drag in game manager, we go to inventory, show inventory, and in here we make it true. Don't forget to save. And now we should be able to enable and disable this whenever we need to. So we can click here on this X, and we get an unassigned reference exception. And unassigned reference exception means it's basically the same as the opposite, like the null reference exception. So meaning we have we are trying to access something which is not there. In this case, our inventory panel has not been set. We get a none as a game object over here into the panel itself. So we just drag the inventory panel inside over here in our inventory slot, literally where the panel has been. And now I want to click on the X. It closes that. If I click on this little backpack, then it opens it. Pretty good. So now we can add fish, we can add stone, we can open our inventory, we can sell some, we can close it or reopen, and so on and so forth, and we are good to go. We have like a fluid system in which we can change between between screens just with simple actions. And as you can see, pretty good. We can also automate it so that it automatically closes itself whenever the game starts, like directly from the inventory itself, but we do not, or we try to avoid using that in Awake, even if we could. We can also use the start method over here, which you know already. We can literally just say show inventory, and then in here we pass in just false as being the argument for the boolean to close it automatically whenever the game starts. Don't forget to save. And when I now press play, my inventory should be automatically closed, and we shouldn't see that at any time as long as we are not clicking on our inventory button, getting the feedback, nothing is inside. Pretty good. We can open that. We're gonna have some fish. We can add some stones here as well. Pretty good. We can sell them. We're gonna see that the value is correct, 15, 15, and 25 because added to that. And yeah, that's basically it, how we can create a simple and rather quick inventory for this particular point. Pretty good. And so in that case, you can create like hundreds of different items. You can add to it. You can once again do upgrades, whatever it is. Super simple. For the other buttons here on top, you basically do the same. Like you're gonna have like achievements, as we already said before. Like we fill then literally another inventory which shows which achievements do we have. Then we list them over here inside the grid. If we don't have them, then we don't show them, just as an example. And we have another list in which contains like all the achievements literally, or maybe you're gonna show them all, but maybe later on just redraw them with a check mark in the bottom or in the back side, like blah 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 achievement, super clicker achievement, and so on and so forth. And this fills based on like we already did with the little inventory thing, like it just fills up whenever something has been completed. And so we just give it a boolean, which is like achievement we got it or we didn't got it, then we are good to go. And then we just show them differently, like we have done it or we haven't done it. And based on that boolean, true or false, you just draw over a check mark or a stamp or whatever you think and please and like. So for upgrading, that maybe will take a minute or two as well. So what I will do right now is a little break over here, because I'm over 3 hours already online, and I go over later on into this, maybe into a second part, in which I go further with achievements, in which I go maybe for this little button, in which we can literally add these automation things, and maybe we're also gonna take a look into upgrades. So in the end, there is a full, kind of fully functional thing or up and running. So in the end, we're gonna also need to have something like if a game has been completed, like whenever there's no cent in the center literally anymore, then we have the possibility to let's say show a panel. Oh yeah, you won, you did it, whatever. Or we're gonna go and restart the game with something else in the center. But also that is completely up to you. You can design it whatever you please and like. You just take a list of images and then just show the the actual image about it. But for the moment, that should be it. We have added quite some interesting things already. We have added the coin system in a stamina system. We have added literally some goal. We have added some functionality to different items. We are able to shovel away sand, so we decrease that one. We take care of the stamina. We take care of that. We have an inventory literally system running over here, even if we don't have much items at this particular point. But once again, when it comes to upgrades, we probably add a bit to it, and that's it. So yeah, for the moment, I want to stop the stream, and probably I'm back in an hour or maybe two. You will get an idea and a message about it, I believe. So cool. Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in. If you have any questions in the future and whatsoever, then just feel free to comment down below. If you want to take a look into some courses I've created in the past, then yeah, feel free to check them out in the bottom as well. Good. Thanks a lot again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this one, and talk to you next time. Bye bye.